What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to our regularly scheduled program where we live stream essentially every day, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on weekdays, and on Sundays, which is today, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on days like today. So, welcome back to the stream. I'm kind of still getting back into the swing of things. I did one regular stream previous when I was back home in the normal setup, but we're kind of still getting back into the swing of things. So, welcome back to anybody that is joining the stream now. Let me just get myself set up quickly, and I'll give a few moments for some of you boys to be able to join the stream here. Um, but since we spoke last, there have been a couple of updates. There was no UFC card this weekend yesterday, unfortunately. But what we did have was a Misfits card, and usually, those sort of cards I'm not that interested in. But this card specifically, I was kind of interested in. There's three fights that I cared about a little bit. The Dylan Dennis fight, I thought was, it probably was always going to be the way it turned out, but I thought it was interesting to see him fight again after a while in MMA. Then we had the Tony Ferguson fight, which turned out to be an amazing performance from Tony. And then the main event, we had Darren Till, which was an absolute murder. I don't know how else to put it. So those three fights turned out to be pretty solid, I'd say. But the first thing that we should really get into, what's up, John? What's going on, brother? What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the stream. But the first thing that I want to touch upon is the Tony Ferguson fight. So I will preface this with saying the stoppage is probably bad. But who cares? I mean, Tony Ferguson actually looked solid. He didn't look amazing, but I thought he looked solid in the fight. His head movement was a lot better. His fundamental defense was actually a lot better as well in this boxing fight compared to normal. But yeah, good performance. And his pressure obviously had a big effect on Salt Poppy as the fight was progressing. And in that third round, I think it was second or third round, he landed a bunch of punches in combination, put an onslaught on Salt Poppy, and he got the finish. The finish was early, but who cares? It's Tony Ferguson. Really happy for him that he got a win. Obviously, he was very happy about the finish and the victory, getting it in for the first time in a while, since 2019, I believe. So good for Tony. Great win. And for Salt Poppy, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He's okay, I guess, but I'm just happy for Tony. Tony got his first win in 6 years, just in a different sport. Yeah. It's I'm happy for him. Definitely happy. Going into it, I really thought he would get knocked out or just lose by decision and take a decent amount of damage. But as I said, he actually made some adjustments with his fundamental defense. His head movement was better than it used to be, which is kind of weird to see at this advanced age, that he's making improvements to his defense a little bit. But he did it, and yeah, he looked solid, I'd say. Shout out to Salapafi and the ref for letting him play. yeah. That was definitely a bad stoppage, but who cares? Fuck it. Tony got a win. Tony was on to win. I actually think you're probably right. You're probably right. In that first round, the second half of the first round, or maybe it was in the second round, there was a little bit of a switch in that fight where Tony's pressure was starting to get to Salt Poppy. He was starting to land a little bit better. Salt Poppy was not looking nearly as good as he was early on. Early on, he was doing a good job at landing a bunch of left hands, kind of flush on Tony, which one of them hurt him, I believe. Maybe two of them hurt him, but he was still there, obviously. And as the fight progressed, his pressure was becoming too much, and he kind of just was kind of pulling away with it and got the finish in the third round. But yeah, good win for him. For Soul Poppy, I mean, I don't really watch Misfits that much. I don't really watch too many of his fights, but from what I've heard about him, I've heard he's a pretty good boxer. But I don't know. Maybe he just has deficiencies in his game, whatever. But good win for Tony. 21. Let's go. Welcome to the stream, by the way. But yeah, it's fire. Tony actually won. I was definitely surprised about it, but I was very, very happy that Tony was able to get the victory there. No, this isn't laying him in his rise, but if Dana goes back, nah, it's not gonna happen. The UFC is not signing him. Tony kind of called out McGregor. I did see that, yeah, but that's not gonna happen either, most likely. Yeah. I would love to see Conor versus boxing. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. I'm assuming Conor's never going to fight ever again in boxing or MMA or whatever. But I did see that, though, in the post-fight press conference, that they kind of called out Conor, or sort of. I don't even know if Tony said it initially. I think somebody else brought it up. But yeah, probably not going to happen. But we shall see. But yeah, so then Dennis got the 5-second submission. I don't know. He kind of he fought a literal plumber out there. But It's the first time that he fought in MMA in a while. I mean, he's a legitimately really good high level Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, and he showed that in that fight. But for him, you would like to see him go up against someone who's a little bit better than his opponent. Literally got a mounted guillotine within like 3 seconds, and his opponent tapped immediately. So obviously not too much experience from that guy on the ground. But yeah, that's what it is in that one. And then the main event, Darren Till literally almost murdered Luke Rockhold in that fight. I talked about this before. Darren Till actually is kind of carving out a really nice lane for himself. He's fighting in misfits. He's a legitimately really good boxer where he doesn't need to worry about takedowns or anything like that. And he's fighting guys that are worse than him. Luke Rockhold is obviously worse than Darren Till in boxing, and some of the other guys that Till has fought in misfits are obviously worse than him. And Darren Till is making a lot of money while doing so. So I'm kind of happy for him. He's carving out a nice little niche for himself. And this is probably or not probably, definitely his best performance yet in boxing and misfits. And yeah, I mean, he's legitimately really good, Darren Till. For me, the fight that I would probably like to see for him next would be like a Jake Paul or something like that, but probably isn't going to happen. I'm assuming Jake will not want to take that fight. So I heard he was calling out some other guys, 50-year-old boxer, which I don't love, but whatever. We'll see what's next for Till. But regardless, I am kind of happy for him. He's kind of just, making millions of dollars by boxing guys that are definitely worse than him. So good for him. I actually like Ferguson in boxing. Yeah, he'll probably, I would assume, especially after winning here, I'll assume he'll fight a couple more times, or maybe one more time. We'll see. But yeah, if he fights guys that are, YouTubers or whatever, maybe he'll have success. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. What's up? Let's go. Man. Yep. Let's go. Got it. You got it done. Luke Rockhold is a guard stand-up in that career, definitely not a strong suit. Yeah, it was kind of weird to see that he accepted a boxing fight, but he's kind of been doing like weird things ever since he retired from MMA with bare knuckle, and then he did karate combat, I believe, and now he's boxing against Darren Till. So he's kind of just trying to do it all, but to be honest, he hasn't had a lot of success. And in boxing specifically, I don't really know why Luke Rockhold would want to box. I mean, he's never been known to be a good boxer, obviously, in his MMA career. So yeah, I don't know. And especially going up against Darren Till, it was never a good matchup for him. One thing that I will say, which was probably a little bit surprising, was how easy it was for Darren Till. Darren Till didn't do anything like crazy out there. He was literally just throwing left straights, which has kind of always been the problem for Luke Rockhold, the left hand. But it was just kind of weird to see how easy it was. Like, how much did this guy really train for this? Or maybe he just has his propensities that he's always had throughout his career. But literally, it was just a jab left hand a couple times that hurt him. That hurt Luke Rockhold in the first round, I believe, and then the second round or third round, whatever it was, Darren Till put him out again with a left hand. So good performance from Darren Till. Weird to see that Luke Rockhold was boxing, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. I believe Darren Till will be back in the UFC at some point, still young at 33. Yeah, I actually heard a lot of people talk about that, and obviously Darren Till wasn't cut. He was asked to be released, and the UFC accepted it. Listen, he's probably never going to have that much success in the UFC, even at this point, just because he cannot stop grappling at all. But listen, if he gets a couple more wins, if he gets a big win under his belt against whoever, I don't even know who it would be specifically, but I know it sounds funny, but theoretically, if he boxed Jake Paul and beat Jake Paul, knocked him out or something like that, maybe the UFC would re-sign him. I don't know if he would even have any interest in that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I could definitely see it happening. And yeah, he's not old at all. He's probably still in his prime. It is weird to see. One thing I want to say, though, is I feel like he may be on something because he always had issues with staying on weight and staying in shape throughout his whole MMA career. And all of a sudden now his shoulders are ginormous. He's huge. He's in great shape. So maybe he's just, working out more. Maybe he's just in better shape naturally. But I think there's a possibility that he's on something at this point. He does look like he's in the best shape of his life. How are Darren Till do against the girl in boxing? In boxing only matches, he'll do pretty well. I mean, people forget, man. Darren Till in his Muay Thai career was undefeated, had like a ridiculous 44-0 record, something like ridiculous like that. So pure striking, Darren Till is very legit. in a pure boxing match against other middleweights in the UFC, I think he'll do very well. Maybe he'll even beat everybody, honestly, unless I'm forgetting about someone specifically. But I think in pure boxing, Darren Till would do very well against most of these other guys at the middleweight division, maybe even everybody. Yeah, he's really good. He's really good at striking. Obviously, the only thing that's really been an issue for Darren Till over the years was him getting out wrestled, him just getting taken down super, super easily. If you even look back at his fight against Dricus, how easily Dricus was able to get the takedown on him and get the submission like immediately. It's just not a great look for Darren Till. So we'll see. I know a lot of people were saying the UFC may look to re-sign him, and maybe they do. But one thing that I will say is, as good as Darren Till is looking in boxing, as he is training for boxing at this point, and he has been doing so for a couple years at this point. His grappling defense is obviously not going to get better. It's probably only going to get worse as he's not really training that. So his transition to the UFC or to MMA in general may be a little bit difficult for him, and maybe his takedown defense will even be worse than it was before. Just not doing it for a while. But we'll see. We'll see. But in terms of the Misfits events overall, I thought it was pretty good, actually. Obviously, we didn't have any UFC to watch this weekend. So it was kind of nice to see that we had some interesting fights, to say the least, at the Misfits card. And the card was pretty good. The top 3 fights, those were really the only fights that I watched personally. I didn't really care for any of the other ones. I heard some of the other fights were good, but I didn't really care for them. But for the top 3 fights, Dylan Danis kind of a wash, 6 seconds submission or whatever, 15 seconds, whatever it was. That was a wash. But then the Tony Ferguson fight, as well as the Darren Till fight, I thought were very entertaining. So pretty good card overall. And that kind of transitions us very nicely into UFC Paris, which I think is probably going to be a really good card. And yeah, it's coming up this upcoming weekend. So we have for the main event, Imavov and Caio Borralho. We have BSD and Mauricio Rufy. I think both of those fights are going to be very high-level fights and very high-stakes fights. For Caio Borralho and Imavov, it appears to be the winner of that fight will get the next title shot. It does make it a little bit more confusing now that we do have RDR and Fluffy fighting. So there's kind of like 2 number 1 contender fights happening at a very similar time. So we'll see out of the winners of Caio Borralho and Imavov and out of the winner of RDR and Fluffy who actually gets the next title shot. But still, this is a fight that obviously has a ton of meaning on it between Caio and Imavov. And then for BSD and Rufy, it's also a fight that has a lot of meaning on it as well, because for BSD, if he's able to beat a guy of the caliber of Rufy, he's really going to propel himself back. I mean, he's already in the rankings, but he's going to propel himself higher in the rankings. And and early on in BSD's career, he was seen to be a guy who could be really good at the lightweight division, beating a lot of guys very easily earlier on in his career. But after taking a couple losses in a row, BSD is perceived in a very different way at this point than he was previous. But if he goes in there and beats a guy like Rufy, who at this point has a lot of hype and excitement around his name, that could really put BSD's name right back on the map, and he could be seen as a legitimate contender once again at the lightweight division. So both the main and co-main event do have a lot of meaning to them. And in terms of the fights themselves, they're most likely going to be very exciting. For Caio as well as Imavov, usually they're in exciting fights. For BSD and Rufy, they're always in exciting fights. So they're probably going to be pretty good as well. We have some other good names on the card, of course, on the main card, as well as the prelims, some UFC debuts on the card. We have a guy, Sam Patterson, on the card who's been looking pretty good as of late. Gustafsson versus Fakhretdinov. That's not the most high-level fight in the world, but it's definitely a fight that's going to be very exciting. So good fights overall, main card as well as prelims on this card. And as I said a bunch of times, whenever the UFC goes to Paris, the crowd is usually great and usually kind of just makes the fights themselves even more fun than what they otherwise would have been in other arenas, or especially in the Apex. Because I think this kind of goes without saying, but it is true. Whenever the UFC goes to places that have an amazing crowd, it just adds a level to the fights themselves. I mean, I know the fight between Islam Makhachev as well as between Islam and Volkanovski was an amazing fight regardless, but the fact that the crowd was so amazing in that fight kind of took it to the next level, and it just made it that much more fun, I thought. But yeah, so good stuff for sure. And yeah, that's kind of what we have for this upcoming weekend. On Tuesday, I mentioned it before, but if anybody wasn't here for that, I am going to be doing a watch along on Tuesday for the Dana White Contender Series. Of course, we're in the midst of this Contender Series season, and this upcoming Tuesday we have another one. We did one watch along before for the Contender Series, and it turned out to be a really bad Contender Series. But I think the two Contender Series following that turned out to be really good. So hopefully this upcoming weekend is going to be fun. Or not weekend, this upcoming Tuesday is going to be fun for the Contender Series. So that's something also to look forward to. And also, on top of that, we will be doing a watch along for this UFC Paris card. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to join in and tune in, and we'll react to fights live together. Do a best crowds tier list sometime. Ooh, that's a good one, actually. Yeah, I'll write that down. Best crowds. Let's put that in. Yeah, there's a lot of really good crowds out there, actually. But yeah, we should do a best crowds and we should do a worst crowds as well. I think I think Brazil may be on worst crowds. We'll see how Rio looks, but there's been a couple of cards in Brazil that just haven't been great crowds at all. As I mean, in the past they've been good, but there's been some recent examples of it that haven't been great. As they kind of just leave early, they're just not that excited. But for best crowds, we'll definitely do a tier list. When is the next UFC card? It's this Saturday. It's this Saturday, the Paris card. And when does a Contender Series end? Actually, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Contender Series. When does it end? It ends. Okay, I'm assuming it's 10 weeks, so it ends. If it'll load. October 14th, I believe. I believe it's only 10 weeks, right? Or am I missing something? I think it's 10 weeks. So October 14th is when it ends. So we definitely got some more time for the Contender Series. They're usually pretty fun fights. Obviously, these are guys that are not like huge names. Obviously, they're trying to make their name, but a lot of times it turns out to be good fights, as these guys are obviously trying to get a contract and they're going for the finish usually. So it does turn out to be a pretty good card overall. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it does turn out to be pretty good. So whenever there's a Contender Series fight, I will be doing a watch along with you boys on here. And obviously we have one on Tuesday, which I'm excited about. And yeah, a couple watch alongs this weekend, or this weekend as well as this weekend. So I'm excited about that. Obviously, just happy to be back to our normal schedule live streams every day during the week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and on Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So a lot of fun stuff in store for you boys and as for the channel in general. So I'm excited about it for sure. For sure. But what do you guys think, by the way, about this upcoming weekend? You think the card's good? Who do you got for the main event? Kaio Imavov, or co-main event BSD Rufi? Who do you guys got? I got a couple videos coming out about both of those fights soon. Well, one tomorrow, one on Wednesday, about both of those fights specifically. And then I'll have another video coming out on Friday, unrelated to the card. But yeah, I definitely have my thoughts curated already on this card and these specific fights. But what do you boys think? One thing that I will say that I found interesting is I saw on the betting odds. I actually checked out some bets that I like for this upcoming weekend, which I could talk about a little bit. But one thing that I found interesting for the betting odds is I did see that Caio Bahalia was the favorite, a very slight favorite at a -130, I believe. But still, it is a little bit surprising to me. Full disclosure, I'm leaning with Caio Bahalia to win this fight. But still, I thought it was interesting to see that he was the favorite. I assumed that everybody would be on the side of Imavov. So that was interesting. And then for the BSD Rufi fight, BSD is a +150 underdog, I believe, something like that, which I think makes sense. Yeah, +152 underdog for BSD, which I think makes sense. But yeah, the main event surprised me a little bit. Yeah, -128 favorite for Caio Bahalia. I do, as I said, I do think Caio's going to figure it out and figure out a way to win this fight, but it is interesting to me that he's the favorite. Well, yeah, I guess just given some early picks. This is usually something that's offered on our members only, but since you boys are here now, I'll tell you some plays that I like early on. These, of course, aren't my official plays for the week. The props aren't even out yet, but just some plays that I like initially is I kind of like Sam Patterson here at -174. Initially, Sam Patterson didn't appear to be an amazing fighter. It seemed like his chin wasn't that great, but in some of his recent performances, he's shown how good he is on the ground with his grappling, getting submissions, even on the feet. In his last fight, he was able to do a good job at improving his striking, landing big shots, and finding a finish in that one as well. So even though it's a -170 premium against Trey Waters, I do think Sam Patterson kind of has this fight in the bag personally. And even at -174, I still think the value is probably there. The next fight that I like here is Ante. He's coming up from which organization is he coming from? I don't remember actually. LFA, I believe he's a former LFA champion. So this is his UFC debut. Tybura is okay fighter, but he's kind of just one of those blobs, and he's like a million years old at this point. So hopefully we can get some new blood in there. I don't mind the value there. Another value bet that I like here is actually Hibero at +280. I actually like this value. Hibero is obviously very, very hittable, and if Sai can land a couple big shots, he's probably going to finish him. But Hibero is getting better. His striking's looking better. And for Sai, in his last fight, he looked terrible. He actually lost his last fight. And at +280 against a guy who I don't think is personally very good in Sai, I think the value at +280 is probably pretty good. Other value that I like in the card is maybe you can do Paul Craig via submission. Why not? That's usually a bet that I usually take. But I'm assuming he's probably not going to win that fight. And then I also like BSD at +152 here, and I like Kyle Bahalio at -128. So yeah, not official plays or anything like that, but those are just a couple plays for this upcoming weekend that I do like. As I said, I will be doing a full in-depth breakdown of all my picks and giving it out and everything. It's a members only thing. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to hit that join button, join the channel, and you'll get all those exclusive perks for this weekend for UFC Paris, as well as any additional card that comes in the future, as well as early access to videos, members only live streams that I will be getting into pretty soon, which will be Fridays, as well as other perks as well. So yeah, if you're interested, be sure to join. Since Dana White announced new fights last week, do you feel the main events? I think there is a chance that it could be Ilia Topuria, the main event of that card for UFC 322, 323. But we'll see. I did feel like there should have been some movement for the lightweight division. So at this point, it feels like it's either going to be Ilya versus Arman or Ilya versus Gaethje. I feel like it's probably going to be one of those two options, just because it seems like there's not going to be a fight before Ilya fights next. Because Ilya has been saying that he wants to fight in December, and at this point, said this a bunch of times. There's three guys: Arman, Gaethje, and Patty, three guys that could potentially get the next shot against Ilia Topuria. But since a fight hasn't been made between these guys yet to see who's the real number one contender, it seems like the UFC is just going to put together a fight between Ilia and either Gaethje or Ilia or Arman. I think Ilia versus Arman makes the most sense in the world, but we'll see what the UFC decides to do. So because of that, I think there is a real possibility we could see Ilia Topuria headline the card in December, and maybe it's against Arman Tsarukyan. I think that's a fight that makes the most sense in the world, but as I said, we'll see what the UFC decides to do. And for the co-main of that card, I feel very confident in saying it's most likely going to be Joshua Van and Pantoja. Both Van and Pantoja are very active, actually, especially Joshua Van. And Van's and Pantoja's last fight was a little bit ago at this point, so I'm sure both of them want to get back in the octagon. I haven't heard anything about it, any rumors or anything like that, but I kind of just feel like they're probably going to fight in December on that card as the co-main event. So since they weren't announced for the November card, which is kind of what I was hoping for, but the UFC went a different direction for the New York card, I do feel like they're probably going to be on the December card, assuming there's no injuries or anything like that. So if I had to guess, I'd probably say Ilia Topuria, Arman Tsarukyan main event. Co-main event would probably be Pantoja and Van. And there's a lot more confidence in that co-main event happening than the main event. Because I don't believe Gaethje will fight again this year. Yeah, all right. Well, if he gets a title shot offer against Ilya, he'll accept it, obviously, regardless of when. I mean, Gaethje, I don't think has any injuries at this point. He hasn't fought in a little bit. So if the UFC offers him to fight Ilya in December, I'm sure he'll take it. But yeah, I don't think he deserves it. Sai's so boring. He is very boring. He is very boring for sure. It ain't gonna be Armin. I can tell you, he needs to get a win before that. Yeah, I know the UFC or Dana White specifically has said that before, but there's not an obvious contender at this point. I mean, could they really do Ilya versus Patty immediately? Maybe they could. Maybe they could, but it obviously wouldn't be deserving, especially considering that Armin is the number one contender. I get it that he pulled out last second against Islam and he hasn't fought since, which is not a great look for Armin. I will say that, but still, he's such an obvious number one contender at this point. He's a fight that I think makes the most sense in the world. Fighting Ilya, I mean, first of all, he deserves it. As I said, he's the number one contender, but also I think it's a fight that has a lot of intrigue as well because Armin is certainly the toughest test for Topuria out of him, Gaethje, and Patty. And it would be interesting to see how Ilya is able to deal with that wrestling style of Arman Tsarukyan. I said this a bunch of times. I still think Ilya finds a way and he probably knocks out Arman Tsarukyan, but still, it'll be interesting to see how he's able to deal with that wrestling style. So that's a fight that I personally want to see, but we'll see what direction the UFC decides to go. Armin is deserving. Justin's easiest fight to pass. He's the biggest fight. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Yeah. Gaethje is I think by far the easiest fight out of the other two options. Although I do think Patty he does have some danger, of course, for Ilya if he's able to get top position on the ground. I just don't think it's very likely that that happens, to be honest. I don't think his wrestling is that good. And on the feet, I kind of just feel like he's going to be getting pressured a lot of it. So it's going to be difficult for him to shoot in for a takedown and be successful with it. But yeah, I would agree with this. UFC already made it known that he's getting a shot now. Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. They have said that in the past. I just think as some time has passed, maybe they'll change their mind a little bit. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. The only thing is, like, it already is August, the end of August, basically September. So if Armin does need to fight one more time before he gets a title shot, there's not much time for him to do it. For him to fight somebody else and then make a very quick turnaround for December to fight Ilya Topuria. So that's kind of why I feel like maybe the UFC will just give it to Armin title shot if he is the next guy without fighting anybody next. But we'll see. Unless they're trying to push it and maybe Ilya Topuria will fight in January or February for one of the first cards with the new Paramount deal. We'll see. 3 times Ilya, Justin, Murphy, Volk, and Van Pantoja. Ooh, I don't mind that. Yeah. I also heard some rumors as well that Murphy versus Volk might be on the December card. So maybe that will be the option. I mean, that would be an amazing card. I just feel like it's not super likely, though. I know the UFC does like to stack up their December cards, but as we talked about before, they are moving to Paramount, so I don't think they're going to not even waste, but they're going to take away 3 title fights away for this December card for their last fight on the deal with ESPN, because that kind of doesn't allow them to use some of those title fights in the beginning half of 2026. So I think it's unlikely, very unlikely, that there's 3 title fights on the December card. But as a fan, I would love that. That would be an amazing, amazing card for sure. Armin versus Top Welter would be interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting too. Yeah, I guess so. I kind of see what you're saying. It would be interesting to see how we do moving up a weight class. But as I said, me personally, I really want to see Armin versus Ilya. That's the fight to make, I think. Ilya versus Patty is a huge fight, and I'll be very excited for it as well. Probably would make the UFC the most amount of money. But in terms of like a hardcore perspective, Armin obviously is the toughest test for Ilya at 155, and we want to see it. We haven't seen him go up against an elite wrestler like Arman Tsarukyan yet, so I would like to see it. Charles Oliveira has really good wrestling, and we saw that in the short fight. But still, we saw Ilya's ability to not only stop the takedown but reverse position, get on top. But Charles isn't the same level of wrestler as Arman Tsarukyan, so I would like to see that personally. But we'll see. It's kind of weird to see that they're just waiting. There's no news or anything happening with the 155ers for the title shot, as well as some of these contenders. Dan Hooker's in the mix as well. There's so many guys that just don't have a fight at this point. But we'll see. I guess we'll have our questions answered as time does go on. Who do you think wins, Edwards Prates? I think Prates does. I talked about this a lot. I think Leon is a really good fighter. Obviously, he's very, very talented. He's very, very skilled. The problem with him is he just has no confidence at all. If anything like doesn't go his way perfectly, he'll lose all his confidence. So I think Prates will probably land one big shot, maybe not even knock out or hurt Leon that badly. But I think after a couple big shots land, Leon will start to lose confidence. Prates will start to build, and I think he'll find the finish. And also, Leon does tend to back up significantly, which is also something that Prates wants you to do. Usually when Prates has his most success, where he finds his knockouts, is usually when he has his opponent alongside the cage behind that black line, which I believe this fight probably will be held at for the majority of the fight. And if Leon's on the back foot, which typically is what he does, it'll be difficult for him to find takedowns, of course, on the back foot alongside the cage, but also it'll make it a lot easier for Prates to land up a big left hand and potentially find the knockout. My prediction for the fight, early prediction, would be a Prates finish, knockout specifically. I disagree. Armin doesn't deserve anything. He blew his chance. Well, if you're going to compare it, I get your argument. I do get it, and it does make sense. Obviously, he did get a title shot against Islam Makhachev, and he kind of did blow it. And in an ideal world, I would have liked to see Armin fight once again before getting another title shot. I do agree. But since we're kind of in this situation where Justin Gaethje clearly doesn't deserve the title shot, I mean, I don't really think you can make an argument that Gaethje deserves it. And also, Paddy Pimblett also doesn't really deserve the title shot. I think we're kind of in a situation where there's not an obvious contender, and Arman Tsarukyan is, out of the other options, is the most obvious contender that should be earning the next title shot out of him, Gaethje, and Paddy. So I think because of the circumstance, Arman Tsarukyan probably deserves the title shot the most. It's not like there's an obvious guy. It's not like Justin Gaethje's on a 4-fight win streak over big names getting finishes. He's on a 1-fight win streak, and I get it. He won fights before that, but still he lost in between, and you don't get to, before your loss, carry over those wins and say, oh, well, I'm on a 5-fight win streak and the loss was in a meaningless fight. I don't think that holds any weight personally. So Gaethje's on a 1-fight win streak. Paddy is on a longer win streak, but his best win is against Michael Chandler, who's clearly washed, and Arman Tsarukyan just beat Charles Oliveira not too long ago. So although it was a very close fight, I thought you could have made the argument Charles won. Regardless, Arman got it on the scorecards. So he deserves it the most, in my opinion. If they do 3 title fights, at least one. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, it's very rare that we get 3 title fights in general, but yeah, if they were going to do 3 title fights on any sort of card, it probably would have to be a women's MMA fight for one of them. Yeah, you're probably right. Ian Gary versus Armin would be interesting. That would be interesting, yeah. I know a lot of people don't like Ian that much, but I've talked about this a lot. For Ian, he does a really good job at nullifying what his opponents do really well. So it'd be interesting to see if he can utilize footwork, stay away from Armin. And if the fight is held on the feet, if Ian Gary is able to kind of just stay away by utilizing footwork, I think he will be able to piece up Armin on the feet. So it would definitely be interesting for sure. But we'll see. We'll see if Armin ever decides to move up. I actually think that Lemon would be a good fight in the first round. That's fair. Yeah, probably. Lemos is a pretty entertaining fighter for women's MMA as well. So yeah, maybe. That's the fight to make right now. The December matchup between Hooker and Armin for December. Yeah. I think Hooker actually has a lot of options that you could put together for him. Hooker versus Armin, I think, is a really good fight to make. I do agree with that. Also, you could do Paddy versus Armin. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. You could even do Gaethje versus Armin. I think that also kind of makes a lot of sense. There's definitely a lot of options for Dan Hooker for sure, but we'll see what direction the UFC goes. Obviously, at this point, we don't have any news. I did hear a lot of rumors that he wants to fight on the November card in MSG. I hope he does fight on that card. And if they do him versus Armin or him versus Paddy or something like that, that'll be a really fun fight. So there's definitely a lot of fights to be made at 155. We're kind of just waiting for the fights to actually get made. So that's kind of the situation we're in currently at this point. Gaethje needs to stop being stubborn and just fight Paddy. Yeah, I agree with you. If Paddy and Justin fight, the winner of that fight will certainly deserve a title shot at that point. 100%, I would agree with that. But at this point, I feel like they're both one win away from getting a title shot. For Patty, he's one win away against a top 5 guy. And for Gaethje, he's probably just one win away against whoever he fights. So I do think that fight makes all the sense in the world. It was rumored to be on the Dricus card, the Dricus Hamzat card. Obviously, turned out to be fake news. But yeah, Gaethje's obviously being very stubborn. And I personally think if he doesn't fight at all, unless it's a title shot, he's just going to retire. I don't think he's going to get a title shot personally. He definitely doesn't deserve it, and I don't think he's going to get it either. So we'll see. Maybe he's kind of just being stubborn at this point, but after a while, if he sees that he's not going to get a title shot, maybe he'll change his mind. Maybe the UFC will offer him a lot of money, and I know he said in the past that if the UFC offers him a big bag, he'll fight somebody else. So maybe something gives, and we see Gaethje fight Patty or somebody else, and if he wins that fight, he would earn another title shot. So we're kind of just in a wait and see moment for Gaethje and a lot of other guys at the weight class. It's ways Gaethje. Yeah, I mean, if it is on the feet, yeah, obviously Gaethje would have an advantage. But yeah, that's why it's an interesting fight. I mean, I've said this a lot. I'm not super high on Patty personally. On the ground, he's elite. He has legitimate, really good jiu-jitsu. His top pressure is really good. He has good ground and pound shots, as we saw in the Michael Chandler fight, as well as some other performances as well. I'm just not that high on him on the feet. He doesn't really do things that well. His boxing is terrible, if we're being honest. He has done a good job at changing his style in a way where he kind of skirts alongside the cage, utilizes a lot of leg kicks until he could find a clinch situation or a takedown. That's usually what he does now, which is kind of effective for him. But theoretically, yeah, if the fight was on the feet for the entire time, I would certainly favor Justin Gaethje in this one. He has better power. He's obviously way more skilled, better technique. His leg kicks are even better. So on the feet, Gaethje definitely would have an advantage there. But I do think it's interesting. I do think there are paths to victory for Patty. Maybe you can find a clinch position, get a takedown. I know Gaethje has great takedown defense, but still, there could be some sort of a weird sequence where Patty gets to the ground. And if he does get to the floor with Gaethje, I think it's a submission very quickly. Gaethje doesn't really know what he's doing on the ground. Every time that he's went to the ground for the most part against any sort of high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner, he's gotten submitted. And I think if Patty finds a takedown in Gaethje, he submits him relatively easily. So, interesting fight. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, I'm definitely hyped for the Paris card. Yeah, BSD is honestly one of my favorite fighters as well, for sure. He's always action. I personally think he's going to win the fight. I know a lot of people are not high on BSD anymore after his couple losses in a row. And even his last fight in a win, he didn't look amazing, if I'm going to be honest. But still, I think BSD is definitely a good fighter. I think his grappling is very, very good, actually pretty underrated. On the feet, he doesn't have too much nuance to his striking on the feet, but like he is very aggressive. He does pressure his opponents, and he does have solid power. So I think BSD does a lot of things well. This fight is definitely going to be an interesting one. I talked about this before. My official prediction is BSD to win this fight, but I talked about this before. I kind of feel like both guys have a way to beat each other. BSD is very aggressive on the feet, and that could be playing to the game of Rufi, as Rufi wants to just pull back and land a big right hand or a big left hand, which BSD could certainly run into. He definitely tends to run into shots, so that's something to worry about for BSD. But for Rufi, something that BSD does really well is grapple. And for Rufi, we haven't seen him stop that many takedowns or really be tested against an elite grappler like BSD. So I think that'll be interesting to see. And we also have seen Rufi gas out in the past in other fights. And if BSD is able to find takedowns and secure takedowns, I certainly do think we could see Rufi start to gas out in the tail half of that fight, maybe in the second or third round. So they kind of both have a way or style to beat each other. We'll see who's able to execute their game plan better on the night of the fight, but it definitely should be a really exciting fight regardless of who wins. But Patty stand-up's coming along. It is coming along. It's certainly better than it used to be. I will admit that, but still, like, he's not like that dangerous on the feet. I know once upon a time he was kind of throwing himself into boxing range, throwing a bunch of shots in a row and getting knockouts, but that was against very low-level competition, guys that really just didn't know how to strike and were just low-level fighters in general. But at this point, he kind of changed his game plan, as I said, just skirting alongside the cage, utilizing a lot of leg kicks. That's usually what he does on the feet. And yeah, you could have some success doing that, but you're not going to be very dangerous. And when you're going up against these guys like Ilia Topuria or even Justin Gaethje on the feet, they're going to be able to figure that out. cut off the cage, land big shots, force you into boxing situations. And I think, land big shots and maybe even find a finish. For Ilia Topuria, I think he probably would find a finish over Paddy. So that style is good, for a certain level of fighter. But once you start getting into higher level strikers, that style is not nearly as effective, in my opinion. Even old man Ferguson was beating up Paddy on the feet. Yeah, he was. He actually was. Yeah. So Paddy's striking is definitely not great. It is getting better. I do agree with you, and maybe he'll make even more improvements whenever we do see him next. But at this point, I just think there's some holes in this game, and I've talked about this a lot. Guys who have kicking as their main aspect of their striking are guys that I don't think are going to be that successful. I mean, I guess we've seen it at times, but for the most part, if you can't really box, your striking is just you utilizing range and utilizing a lot of kicks, even if they're diverse kicks like a Shara bullet, you're eventually going to get exposed once you face higher level competition, as guys will be able to cut off the cage effectively, get on that inside of kicking range. And if you're in boxing situations like Shara bullet has been, as other guys have been in the past, you're kind of just going to get lit up. So I don't think that style is very effective personally. Imavov winning, Rufi winning. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There definitely are a lot of guys on your side. I'm actually on the opposite end of both of those picks. But I will say it's interesting that Caio Borralho is the favorite. I was not expecting that. I think most people are leaning with Imavov and Rufi to win the fight. So we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them wins. But as I said, at this point, I have a couple videos breaking it down more in depth on Monday and Wednesday about those fights specifically. But my picks are actually the opposite at this point. Yep, I like Rufi too. Should be a great watch. Yeah, it definitely should be a great fight. As I said, both BSD and Rufi have never had a boring fight, and putting them up against each other is going to be really good. And as I said, it does have really high stakes as well. If Rufi wins this fight, he could potentially get a fight against Dan Hooker next. It's possible. And if BSD wins, he kind of puts himself right back into that picture at 155 as a legitimate contender. Beating a guy like Rufi would be a huge win for him. And although people at this point don't see BSD as a great fighter anymore, I think a win over Rufi will kind of change the public sentiment on him. Who wins, Paddy or Holloway in the fight? I would probably say I would probably say Holloway would win that fight. But once again, if Paddy, I mean, this is true for Paddy against most guys. If Paddy can find a takedown and get on top, he is very, very dangerous with the submissions, with his ground and pound. And I think if Paddy were able to get on top of Max Holloway, it would be very difficult for Holloway to survive. But overall in that fight, if it theoretically happened, I think I would lean towards Max Holloway to win the fight. Just utilizing footwork, avoiding takedowns, landing big shots, and just finding a decision victory in a 3 or 5 round fight. That's how I see it going. Down the line, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how everything moves out. But I think down the line, a fight between Holloway and Paddy as like a main event or a co-main event for a pay-per-view or a main event for a fight night. It probably wouldn't be a fight night main event, but theoretically something like that, 5-rounder could make sense down the line. Imavov winning via decision. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It is a 5-round fight, and Imavov has gassed out before. He has fought 5-round fights and not gassed out, but there has been a couple of times where he has. So we shall see. We shall see. I believe Dan Hooker would be. Yeah, Hooker is actually running pretty hot. His striking has been looking pretty good as of late. But yeah, we'll see if it ever does end up happening down the line or anything. Maybe it does end up happening next. We'll see. But yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind. As I said, I'm not that high in Paddy Pimblett, so you're definitely not going to hear me, praising him that much. But what he does well is on the ground. He's legitimately very good. John, let's go. Paddy has a great chin and great toughness. Yeah, for sure. For sure he does. His chin is very, very good. He's taken huge shots and been able to not only not get hurt, but just continue to walk forward. So his chin is obviously very good. I think that's a huge reason for why he's been able to have as much success as he has. Even in the Michael Chandler fight, although Chandler looked terrible in that fight, Chandler did land a big right hand, and he is powerful, and it didn't really hurt or stun or anything to Paddy. So he has a really good chin, and there's been other occasions where he took a lot of shots. He was getting lit up by Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon has no power, though, I will say that. But still, he was able to land a lot of flush shots on Paddy, and it wasn't hurting Paddy in the slightest. So his chin is great. His toughness is obviously very good as well. I just think his skills are just not all the way there, especially on the feet. They're really only on the feet. On the ground, they are there. Charles Oliveira beats Paddy standing as well. Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually very confident that if they ever did fight down the line, that Charles probably would beat Patty. I think Charles kind of has Patty covered everywhere. On the ground is really where Patty's, the strongest, where he's the most dangerous. And I think Oliveira would be just fine on the ground against Patty Pimlet if it were to get there. But if I were Charles, I'd probably keep the fight on the feet, kind of just, pressure Patty, outwork Patty, land a bunch of shots up top, bunch of leg kicks, and a bunch of front kicks to the body, maybe even find a finish. But most likely, I think probably what would happen would be a Charles Oliveira decision victory in a 3 or 5 round fight. Um, but yeah, I think out of most of the guys at 155, I think Charles Oliveira is actually one of the toughest fights for Patty Pimlet. As I said, I think he kind of just has him covered everywhere. But yeah. Adesanya would beat Bahalio, Imavov KO Adesanya. True, it is true, but MMA math usually doesn't work. Well, Adesanya would beat Bahalio, maybe. I don't know. He might. This version of Adesanya is a different version. I mean, he is still. I mean, he's not washed. I've said it multiple times that he's not washed, and I do agree that he's not washed. And he actually kind of was piecing up Imavov, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know who I would lean with personally with Adesanya and Bahalio. But in general, even if Adesanya would beat Bahalio, let's go with that. Even if that is true, MMA math never works, and it doesn't mean that that Imavov would beat Bahalio, even if that were true. Different styles. Obviously, Bahalio is not going to do the same things that Adesanya is going to do out there. I believe Bahalio is probably going to look to grapple a little bit more than he usually does. I think he does have a pretty big advantage on the ground if he were able to get it there, and also if he's consistently putting Imavov on the back foot. I do think it's going to do a good job. It's starting to zap the gas tank of Imavov, and especially if he's constantly shooting in for takedowns, I think it's going to zap the gas tank of Imavov, and I think that's a real path to victory for him. Pressure is very important for Kaio in this fight, which is something he hasn't done in the past that much, but I do believe he may look to do in this fight. Holloway has good takedown defense. Yeah, he does. He does. And that's kind of another thing for Patty, though. On the ground, he's great, as I said a million times, but his wrestling is not great. He can find takedowns, of course, but he's not some sort of elite wrestler. And I think that's a real problem for guys with great jiu-jitsu. Charles Oliveira is an outlier, in my opinion, as he does have really good wrestling. But a lot of guys that have great jiu-jitsu, Mackenzie Dern is actually a great example of this in women's MMA, but even in men's MMA, they typically don't have a great ability to wrestle, which, in my opinion, is such an incomplete game. If your best ability is your submissions on the ground, I find it imperative for you to work on your wrestling and find out a way to get the fight to the ground. But a lot of times, guys with great jiu-jitsu just don't really work on the wrestling that much, or aren't elite wrestlers or good wrestlers or anything like that. And I kind of feel like Patty's in the area where he's just like an okay wrestler. He's not that great. So I do think it'll be difficult for him to get the fight to the ground against some of these guys who have great or even good takedown defense. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Patty and Holloway, what's the word? Yeah, I think it would make sense. But I don't personally think this is going to be the next fight for either guy, personally, just because Holloway isn't fighting until next year. And for Patty, I think either he's trying to push for that title shot against Ilya. I don't think he deserves it, but I'm sure he's trying to push for it at this point. But if he realizes that he's not going to get that next title shot, I'm assuming he's going to want to fight earlier than next year. Because Holloway did say he's going to fight in 2026, and that doesn't mean that he's going to fight in January of 2026. It could be February, it could be March, or even April. Who knows? So I'm assuming Patty's not going to want to wait that long. He's going to want to get a couple fights under his belt and get his way to the point where he's able to get a title shot as quickly as possible. So we'll see. Rufy Topuria would be interesting. Yeah, it would be interesting. Kind of the closest thing, I guess. I mean, we'll see how good Rufy is in this fight against BSD. I think will answer a lot of questions. I do personally think Rufy is a good fighter, but there are some questions about his takedown defense, about his gas tank, and I think we'll get some of those questions answered in this BSD fight. But assuming Rufy is able to get a win in dominant fashion over BSD and continuing to just win and look really good, I do think that Rufy versus Topuria would be the closest thing to Topuria versus Conor that we could possibly see. So it definitely would be an interesting fight. I will say I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately. I said this a bunch of times, but Topuria is probably just going to get one more title defense and move up to 170 to fight Islam Makhachev or even JDM if JDM beats Islam. I'm assuming that's probably what he's going to want to do next. For Topuria, he doesn't really strike me as a guy that wants to fight for that much longer. I think he just wants to fight the biggest names, accomplish something that nobody else has ever been able to do, becoming a three-division champ. And then after that, I don't think he'll have much more motivation to stay in the UFC and continue fighting. At that point, I think there's a good chance he'll retire. If Topuria beats, let's say Arman, let's say he fights Arman X, he beats him, he KOs him, then he moves up and fights JDM or Islam and beats them in whatever fashion, KO or even decision or submission, whatever. And he just beats them and becomes a three-division champion. I think he retires at that point, personally. Maybe he gets one more title defense at 170. It's possible if the name is big enough for Topuria, but I think there's a good chance he just retires. As I said, that's kind of how I see Topuria. I don't think he's going to be fighting that much longer, at least in MMA. And he just wants to be great in the shortest amount of time possible. And after that, maybe just retires and does nothing. He doesn't fight anymore. Or maybe he goes to boxing. He has talked about it a little bit, how he does have some interest in boxing. So we'll see. I hope Topuria doesn't retire soon, but he's a really exciting fighter and he's an emerging star for sure. But I kind of just see him as a kind of fighter like that, where if he becomes a three-division champion, I don't know how much more he would see himself have left, how much more he can possibly accomplish at that point. For some reason, I believe Patterson would be taller than Oliveira. Yeah, well, I actually think Patty is one of the biggest guys at 155. He's huge for the weight class. It's a pretty significant weight cut, and especially considering that he weighs so much out of camp. So he has to cut all that weight just to get back into shape, and then he has to cut all that additional weight just to make weight at 155 is a pretty crazy weight cut for Paddy Pimblett. He's huge for the weight class. Very, very big, which is also a big advantage for him. I talked about that before, but guys that just cut weight better than everybody else, of course, have a big advantage, as they're going to be bigger and probably stronger than most of their opponents. And Paddy's one of those guys. I think he probably is the biggest guy at 155, unless I'm forgetting about somebody. But I think he's probably the biggest guy, considering that Islam Makhachev isn't at the weight class anymore. So yeah, he'll probably be bigger than those guys for sure. Patty should consider a move to 171. I think he will. I think he will eventually, especially as he gets older. The weight cuts are only going to get more and more difficult. So I think as he gets older, especially if he's able to accomplish some things at 155, I think he's probably going to move up to 170. He's just too big for the weight class, I think. And at this point, he's able to make the weight, obviously, but once you get older, weight cuts just become more and more difficult. So I do think he'll probably move up to 170 at some point. Patty has a longer reach than Holloway, I believe. Yeah, I actually don't think that plays a factor at all. He probably does, but I don't think it plays a factor at all personally, because on the feet, I don't think Patty's going to look to strike with Holloway, at least in terms of boxing or using his hands that much. I think it's mostly just going to be kicks and footwork on the feet. So maybe kicking range would be an advantage for Patty, but in terms of his reach, I don't think it would really be that much of a factor in this fight, even if he does have a longer reach, which I'm sure he does. But yeah. It's possible Patty may look to land some longer shots, but long shots like jabs and left hands or right hands. But I don't know. I think for the most part, he's probably just going to look to utilize footwork and leg kicks. Longer reach in Oliveira too. Yeah, but kind of a similar thing. Reach definitely plays an advantage for guys if they have good striking in terms of their boxing. But as I said, I don't think Patty's that guy. And against Holloway as well as against Oliveira, both of those guys are significantly better strikers than Patty. So I don't think it's going to play much of a factor in either one of those fights, honestly. But we'll see if they ever put those fights together. They'll be good fights for sure. Oliveira versus Fiziev, yeah, it's a great fight. That Rio card is actually looking really good in general. The main event is obviously amazing, but the rest of the card is good as well. In terms of a prediction, I'm definitely leaning with Charles Oliveira. I know he is coming back pretty quickly from his knockout against Ilia Topuria, but still, I think stylistically, Charles Oliveira is actually a very tough stylistic matchup for Fiziev. Fiziev is definitely a really good fighter, very fast twitched, but he does gas out a little bit as the fight progresses. This is a 5-round fight, which is something that needs to be considered. But also on top of that, Charles Oliveira, his best work is when he's able to get in the pocket, in the clinch, or just in the pocket in general. Land a bunch of knees to the body, front kicks to the body, elbows up top, left hooks up top as well. And for Fiziev, that's one of the areas where he struggles the most. We saw in both of his Gaethje fights when he fought him that he was really getting pieced up in that clinch area. And as I said, because Charles Oliveira is so good in the clinch, I think stylistically it's a tough fight for Fiziev. And if Charles is able to somehow find a takedown on Fiziev, it's also going to be a very dangerous area for Fiziev, as Fiziev is significantly worse on the ground than Charles. Although Fiziev has tremendous, tremendous takedown defense, it only takes one weird sequence for Charles maybe gets a knockdown, or Charles finds some sort of weird trip or something that catches Fiziev off guard, and they find themselves on the ground. And if that does turn out to be the case, Oliveira will have a really good chance at finding a submission. That's personally how I see the fight going, but we'll see. I get it. I get the criticism and the argument that Charles is coming back very quickly off a pretty bad knockout, but sorry. But what's it called? Sorry about that. But yeah, so he's coming back very quickly. But for Fiziev, he doesn't really hit all that hard, and his kicks are hard. But I don't think this fight is really going to be fought at range that much. So I think Charles is going to be fine in this one. I was wrong, bro. I was longer reach than Topuria. That's a longer reach than Topuria. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not that weird. He's a lot bigger than Topuria is. Although Topuria does have a pretty good reach for his size. Same, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I see the Oliveira fight going. What's going on, brother? Welcome back to the stream. Let's go. Long time. Yes, sir. Welcome back. Just talking about what's it called? The UFC Rio card. It's looking pretty good. Oliveira has good Muay Thai too. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, yeah, his Muay Thai is really good too, obviously as well. But in the clinch, I think that's really going to be the area where Oliveira pulls away in this fight versus Fiziev. But yeah, we'll see. I'm in a longer reach than Patty. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Wait, you're saying Oliveira has a longer reach than Patty? Is that what you meant? I'm not that surprised on that. Oliveira is a very long fighter, I guess. But Patty's bigger, I think. Topuria is the same as Holloway. Yeah, he has Topuria definitely has a really long reach for his size. He's pretty small for 155, but his reach definitely helps out. And also his power and skill obviously help out as well. UFC Paris up next. Yep. Yes, sir. Yeah, that card's looking to be really good. Main and co-main are really good. Some other good fights in the card as well. Some newcomers to the UFC, a couple of them, I believe. So I'm definitely interested to see how these guys look. Whenever the UFC brings in newcomers, it's always interesting to see. The more talent you can get for these weight classes, the better, obviously. The more fights you can put together, the higher level of competition it just makes everybody else if these newcomers are actually good. And yeah, but obviously the main and co-main event are the fights that I'm personally most excited about. But yeah, what do you boys think? Oliveira round 4, he knocks out Fiziev and he knocks down Fiziev. Yeah, I can see that. That's a very real possibility. Maybe early on, Fiziev's speed, he is ridiculously fast. He's very fast twitch. Maybe his speed will give Oliveira some trouble early on. But yeah, as the fight does progress, round 2, 3, and in round 4, I do think Charles will start to build a little bit, get in that clinch, as I said, a bunch of knees, a bunch of elbows. I do think body kicks, body knees, and front kicks are going to be a huge part of Oliveira's game plan going into this fight, just trying to zap some of the cardio away from Fiziev. And as you get into those latter rounds of the fight, round 4, round 5, or even round 3, I do think we're going to start to see Fiziev gas out a little bit. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the scenario. Round 4 submission after a knockdown. Roofie dog walk and BSD. Yeah, we'll see. I'm actually personally on the other side of it. I do think BSD may be able to find out a way to wrestle and gas out Roofie, but we shall see. I kind of mentioned this before. They kind of both have a style where they can utilize their style to beat either guy. For Roofie, obviously his style is he wants guys to be very aggressive against him, and he finds a big counter shot. And BSD is a guy who's very, very aggressive on the feet and certainly tends to run into shots, which is not great going into a fight against Roofie. But at the same time, we have seen Roofie gas out a little bit in previous fights, and I do believe that BSD is actually an elite grappler. And if he is able to find takedowns on Roofie, I do think not only can he gas out Roofie to an extent as the fight does progress, but also he can have a lot of success on the ground. And I do think it'll be difficult to get back up with BSD on top of you. So I kind of feel like both of these guys have aspects of their game make it very difficult for their opponents. But I guess it kind of just comes down to who's able to implement their game plan better on the night of the fight, which is usually true. But I think it's especially true in this fight. Patty's reach is 73 inches, so not too much. Yeah, that's essentially like no difference in all practicality. It's essentially no difference. If you wanted to do rocks, he wasn't that exciting. Yeah, oh yeah, he certainly changed his style a little bit. And he improved the stand-up game significantly. And at this point, not only is he a great jiu-jitsu practitioner, he's also a great wrestler. His wrestling is something that he's significantly improved upon as the years have progressed, and also on the feet. He's very, very elite. His striking is just very polished and just very fun to watch in general, with his front kicks, with his left hook, with his jab, right hand, leg kicks. There's just so many different things that Charles Oliveira does well in the feet. And I believe it was in the fight with Dustin Poirier where Joe Rogan was talking about not Patty, was talking about Charles Oliveira and how he's so diverse on the feet. He throws so many different things at you, which makes it difficult and makes it confusing for you to see what's coming, and it kind of confuses opponents, and that's where he's able to catch his opponents. And I think that's like very well said. I think a huge reason for why Charles has been so successful on the feet is due to the diversity of his striking. There's a lot of things he does well, on top of the fact that he's great power. Justin Gaethje has talked about the power of Charles Oliveira as well as other guys. We've seen a couple knockouts over the years, so Charles is a great fighter, very exciting. Do Bronx became more exciting, maybe around 18, 19. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously he always had ability, of course, but yeah, he really took his game to the next level in terms of his striking, in terms of his fighting style in general. And yeah, at this point, he's still really good. I know a lot of people are saying that Charles may be a little bit washed at this point. We will see. I mean, he's making a really quick turnaround after getting knocked out cold by Ilia Topuria, but we'll see. I think, as I said, personally, I think he'll be fine in this fight. We'll see how he performs in this one, but yeah, I personally don't think he's washed, but we'll see. I really believe he would have found a late TKO or sub. I personally don't think so. I personally think that's always what was going to happen. I thought Topuria was always going to find the knockout. The way Charles fights, he kind of just forces his way into the pocket, and I think that's actually a good thing in the physique fight. But against Topuria, you really don't want to do that. You're kind of throwing yourself into the fire against a guy who hits as hard as anybody. So if he didn't find that knockout, at least in my opinion, if he didn't find the knockout when he did, I think he would have found it eventually, personally. Would have took him into deep waters if he didn't get knocked out. Yeah, but also I don't think we've really ever seen Topuria gas out, and he's fought in the latter half of fights before. He's went 5 rounds before against other guys. And even the Max Holloway fight, I know, was 3 rounds, but that was a difficult fight for Topuria. So I don't know. I think Topuria wins that fight. If they fight 10 times, he probably wins 9, maybe 10. So I'm personally on the other side of it. I just think Topuria is that good, and yeah, but I guess who knows? I mean, Charles does hit hard, so you never know. But at the same time, obviously, Topuria has taken huge shots before and has been fine. Has been able to survive. So I don't know. I just think it's a tough stylistic matchup for Charles Oliveira. And if they ever did the rematch, which I highly doubt they would, but theoretically, if they ever did a rematch, I think Topuria just wins again, probably in the same fashion. So because of that, I don't want to see them fight again. I'm a big Charles fan for sure. Also, something that I wanted to update you guys. Psycho Stu has been released from the hospital and is at home resting, so that's good to see. Obviously, the whole Raja Jackson thing is a little bit old news at this point, but still, it was pretty crazy to see something like that happen, and nobody really stepped in to stop him until it was too late. So bad situation for sure. There hasn't been any updates at all about Raja Jackson, about jail time or any charges or anything like that. So that's been interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of feel like he's going to get a slap on the wrist, personally, based upon how much time has passed and nothing has really happened. But we'll see. Bad situation overall, but happy to see that that Stu is out of the hospital, at home resting, and hopefully he gets better. Topuria Dubox reminded me of Ferguson versus McGregor fight, where McGregor being sniped. Yeah, maybe. Rampage's is called Rampage Jackson Live. Yeah, I know Rampage's channel. Yeah, I know his channel. I've watched some of his streams. He definitely is pretty funny. But yeah, it's kind of just in a different light at this point, at least for me personally, from what happened. But yeah. And then a second, yeah, the Jackson, yeah, that's his podcast. Yeah, I know. I've watched a couple of his podcasts with some other guys. He's pretty funny. Rampage Jackson is definitely a funny guy. And I don't watch his podcast that much, but I have watched it a couple times, and it's definitely interesting. I like his Jackson podcast too. Yeah, me too. I've definitely watched a couple of his podcasts. They're solid, but I don't watch it all the time. Um, It just honestly with every podcast for me, I do watch podcasts, of course, but it just depends on the guest who's on. So, Derek Lewis remembers I was the funniest guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's they are definitely very very funny. Both of them. Whenever Derek Lewis wins a fight, it's just a sight to behold with this whole routine that he does after winning a fight. It's really funny. And for Rampage, he's just funny in general in fights when he's like Maldonado, Malbababo, and also other moments, obviously. But even on just his live streams outside of fighting, he's just a funny guy. So yeah, they're definitely pretty funny. The boys, are they still doing the Rampage podcast? I mean, I'm assuming they are, but have they done anyone recently since what happened? Um, this is well deserved. Fight of the month is Rebetsky versus Chris Duncan. That was in the Apex, actually. Definitely deserved. That fight was amazing. Both of these guys really went at it and turned out to be a great fight. Definitely deserving of fight of the month. But it's kind of something that I talk about. I feel like this fight is forgotten by a lot of people, or maybe not even watched by most people. Maybe they didn't even know it happened just because it was in the Apex, and that's a huge criticism that I have with the Apex. Some of these fights in the Apex are amazing, legitimately, but they're kind of forgotten by a lot of people. So that just didn't watch it, or maybe if they even watched it, they just forget it because it's not in an arena. It doesn't feel as big. But that fight was certainly amazing between Rebetsky and Duncan, and definitely deserved to be fight of the month. So congratulations to both men. But yeah. It was Zabit is getting back to hitting the heavy bag. He's probably never going to fight ever again, but that's something interesting. What else? Do we have any other news here, boys? Let's see. Bo Nickel won some sort of wrestling championship. All right, good for him. Good for him. Let's see what else we got here. But, by the way, what do you boys think of Tony Ferguson? Do you think he's going to fight again? He's going to box again? I'm assuming he probably will. Who he's going to box, I don't know. I kind of want to see the fight between Dylan Dennis and Tony Ferguson in MMA. I think that kind of makes sense. But if Tony only wants to box, definitely not against Dennis. I don't think Dennis should ever box ever again. So if he's going to box, I don't really know who his competition would be. I hope they never do Darren Till versus Tony Ferguson. That would not be good. I don't think they'll do that, but I hope they never do that down the line. Obviously, it's a weight class difference as well, so probably won't do it. But yeah, we shall see. We shall see, fellas. But yeah, not really much news or anything like that. We just have UFC Paris Fight Week on Saturday. I'm excited to get back to UFC fights. It really has felt like we haven't watched a fight in a while, both on stream, but just in general. The China card, which was the previous weekend, not yesterday, but the weekend before that, was at a weird time, so I didn't really get to watch the full card. So I'm kind of fiending for UFC card in general, and the fact that we have a really good one this upcoming Saturday is definitely exciting. I'm definitely really excited for this card. And yeah, and because of the timing of it, I will be doing a full watch along for this card. So that's always fun. I always enjoy watching the fights with you boys on live stream. So as I said, anybody joining in late, I will be doing a full live stream watch along for UFC Paris. So definitely be sure to join it. It will be the full card from start to finish. The card starts at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And the main card starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time. A lot of good fights, both in the prelims as well as the main card. It's not just a card that has two good fights for the main and co-main. It's a card that has good fights littered throughout the card. So I'm excited. I'm definitely excited about it. I'm excited for the Pitbull fight as well. versus Kieta. That's going to be a good one. Bukauskas versus Paul Craig is always interesting when Paul Craig is involved. And Bukauskas is a guy that I think is actually making significant improvements and looking a lot better. So I think that fight, is fun, personally. So that's something to look out for. William Gomes is on the card. Gomes is not the most exciting fighter in the world, but he is definitely very talented and skilled. And I guess he looked a little bit more exciting in some of his more recent fights. So that's something to look out for. Omar Sy is actually a very boring fighter, but he is going up against Habera, who's actually a pretty exciting fighter. So we'll see how that one looks. Tybura is going against Ante, who's coming over from the LFA, I believe, former LFA champion. So that's something that will be interesting as well. Sam Patterson's on the card versus Trey Waters. I do believe Sam Patterson is making significant improvements to his game. He's looking pretty good as of late. And I'm excited to see how Sam Patterson looks in this fight. Brad Tavares is on the card, who's, whatever, but he's been fighting forever. So, another fight for Brad Tavares. Then we have Gustafsson versus Renat Fakhretdinov, which is going to be interesting. That fight is probably not going to be that much skill in the fight, but it will be a lot of action. Both of these guys, as I said, are not very skilled, but they're both very, very physical and kind of just throw shots. So it would be interesting to see for sure. But what are you going to do? Kavanaugh got killed by Charles Johnson. Yeah, he did. It's kind of I think that fight, I mean, obviously I was wrong about the fight. I thought Kavanaugh would win, but that fight, I think, actually tells you, I mean, this has been something I've been talking about forever, and it kind of proves my point right, but I was wrong about my prediction about the fight. But it kind of proves to you how important physicality is. When you look at Charles Johnson's fight against Kavanaugh, he was getting pieced up in the first round, but because he was able to eat all the shots and because he was eventually able to land one big, huge shot on Kavanaugh and knock him out, it kind of just shows how physical he was, and he was clearly more physical than Kavanaugh. That's a huge reason for why I say physicality is so important. If you can take shots really well and it only takes one shot for you to land clean on your opponent to knock them out, you have such a big advantage, even if your opponent is more skilled than you, which I do believe Kavanaugh is probably more skilled than Charles Johnson. Although Charles Johnson is also very skilled. But even when you look at his fight more so, I think his physicality showed more so in his fight against Joshua Van, where in that Joshua Van fight, he was getting pieced up for 2.5 rounds. Then he landed one big right hand and a big uppercut to put him out cold. And it kind of just shows his physicality. So Charles Johnson is a really good fighter for sure. He's very skilled. He's good on the ground. He has good wrestling. On the feet, he's definitely skilled. Some of these guys are more skilled than him at the flyweight division, but he is very physical. So I think that's a big advantage for him. And I think we saw that in the Kavanaugh fight. We also saw that in the Joshua Van fight. And yeah, Charles Johnson does have a pretty bright future ahead of himself. I believe he's already ranked before the fight, but what is he right now? He is number 13 in the rankings for Charles Johnson. So next for him could be Steve Erceg. I don't want to see that personally. I don't want to see Steve get knocked out. Although I think Steve has a good chance. I don't know. Maybe you could do Steve Erceg. Tim Elliott, actually, I think makes more sense. Charles Johnson versus Tim Elliott, I think makes sense. Or maybe you could do Charles Johnson versus Alex Perez. I do think a decent step up in the rankings for Charles Johnson makes sense next for him. He's been getting a lot of wins, obviously, and he's beaten some really good guys. Kavanaugh and Joshua Van, both by knockout on your record, is really impressive. So, yeah. Johnny Walker won. Yeah, that was a great win for Johnny Walker. In my personal opinion, I thought it was kind of obviously it was a good performance from Johnny Walker, but I also thought it was a bad performance from Zhang Minyang. Just because it seemed like he just didn't know what to do with the leg kicks of Johnny Walker. And Zhang also couldn't close the distance. In close boxing range, I thought Zhang would be able to piece up Johnny Walker, land big shots, and find a finish, which is probably what he could have done easily if he, found a way to cut off the cage and get on that inside boxing range, but he was just never able to do that. And because of that, Johnny Walker was able to utilize a lot of leg kicks. Zhang wasn't really checking any of them, and eventually they just got to him. Johnny Walker is very explosive and very powerful, and those leg kicks got to Zhang, and he was able to find the finish not too long after that. So good performance overall from Johnny Walker, but also kind of a bad performance from Zhang, if we're being honest. But happy for Johnny to get back in the winning column. Obviously, nobody expected him to win, including myself. I didn't predict Johnny Walker to win that fight. So good for him. Good performance. And back in the win column for our boy Johnny. Always an exciting fighter. Walker versus who's next? Let's see. Let's see the rankings. So Johnny Walker is currently number 12 in the rankings, coming off a win. Asmad is already taken. He already has a fight booked. Guskov already has a fight booked, I believe. I don't know if it's official, but I heard rumblings about Guskov fighting next against Jan Blachowicz. Volkan Ozdemir already beat Johnny Walker. Dominic Reyes has a fight booked. Rakic has a fight booked. Jamal Hill does not, but they already fought. Jan Blachowicz is a fight book. Roundtree. Actually, everybody ahead of Johnny Walker has a fight book, so he may have to fight somebody behind him. Maybe do Johnny Walker versus Krylov, maybe, or Johnny Walker versus Alonzo Menafield. I mean, as I said, usually when guys are coming off wins, you like them to fight ahead in the rankings, but literally everybody either has a fight booked or Johnny Walker already lost to. Like, I don't think you could do Jamal Hill versus Johnny Walker next. I mean, I guess you could do it, but I don't think Johnny Walker deserves that big of a step up in the rankings, especially considering he did get knocked out by Jamal Hill in the past. But Jamal Hill's on a 3-fight losing streak, so maybe you can do that. And Johnny Walker versus Ozdemir, I think, makes absolutely no sense. He got knocked out bad. So if I had to give an answer, I'd say Johnny versus Krylov, Menafield, or Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill. Those would be my 3 options, I guess. But the Jamal Hill one, I don't think makes that much sense. Ming Yang was never that good. I agree. Ming Yang is probably just going to be a guy that is going to be in probably the lower half of the rankings, maybe an unranked guy, a guy that's going to be on the prelims or maybe like the 5th fight of a main card on a pay-per-view, because he could definitely be exciting for sure at times. He does have a lot of power. He could take a shot really well, and he does get inside the pocket and throws big power shots. So he could be exciting, but I don't think he's that good. As you said, I agree with you. And he's probably just going to be a guy that fights, some decent guys, loses to good fighters, beats some not so great fighters, and he'll probably just be either unranked or he'll be, in the bottom half of the rankings, maybe like 12 or below. I don't think he really gets above that personally, above number 12 in the rankings. Maybe gets top 10 possibly, but I don't even think that's super likely. I don't think Min Yang is going to have that bright of a future ahead of himself, but as I said, I think he'll get, maybe 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss fighter like that, but usually having fun performances. It doesn't check his kicks or move his head. Yep. Yeah. Not at all. Yeah. The fact that it was very clear what Johnny Walker was trying to do, he was literally only throwing leg kicks from what I remember in that fight. And the fact that Ming Yang just didn't check kicks at all after 5-10 leg kicks, he just continued to not check kicks at all, was kind of just weird to see. Obviously, he just refuses to check leg kicks. And in terms of his head, he doesn't move his head either. So yeah. Walker versus Guskov. Yeah, I think that fight does make sense, but I think it is Guskov versus Jan next. That's what I heard. Guskov or Jan versus Walker. Yeah. Are you saying the winner of that fight should fight Walker, or the loser maybe should fight Walker? Because I don't think it's official, but I think that's the fight they're going with next, Guskov and Jan. But I guess the loser of that fight could fight Johnny Walker. That would make sense. Especially if it's Jan. If Jan loses to Guskov, which I think there's a decent chance that happens, then Jan would be, I don't know, he'll move down in the rankings a little bit. Maybe it's like number 8, something like that. Number 9 maybe. And I think at that point, a fight between Johnny Walker and Jan would actually make sense. That'd be a pretty funny sequence of events if that fight does get made at that point. But we'll see. Definitely happy for Johnny Walker for sure. Aljamain Sterling's also coming off a win on that card in China. For Aljo, I know he's talking about fighting for a title next. I don't think he's going to fight for a title next. His performance wasn't that exciting, and also the UFC kind of hates him, so I don't think he's getting a title shot next. He's probably going to need to fight once more. I've said this a lot. I think Aljo versus Evloev as a number 1 contender fight makes a lot of sense, but I know they already fought before, so maybe you could do Yair versus Aljo. I think Aljo probably beats Yair, and then maybe from there he gets a title shot. He would deserve it at that point. So maybe they do that, or maybe they even do Aljo versus Arnold Allen. But I did hear rumblings of Arnold Allen versus Yair, and if that's true, I think Movsar versus Aljo makes all the sense in the world. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what the UFC decides to do, what direction they decide to go with Aljamain Sterling as well as Johnny Walker. Some of the winners from the China card. Honestly, both of those guys took essentially no damage. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. For Aljamain Sterling, his elbow swelled up, but I think he'll be fine from that. It is kind of funny from that spinning elbow that Aljo threw. The guy who got more hurt from that was actually Aljamain Sterling, not Brian Ortega. Ortega didn't appear to get hurt at all, which is kind of crazy. But but yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what we have from that China card. As I said, we're kind of just looking forward to this weekend, Kaio and Imavov as our main event for the UFC Paris card. Not too much news in general for any fight announcements or anything like that. We'll see if we get any fight announcements. We were kind of talking about it before a little bit with the lightweight division. There's a lot of guys that I think should get booked for fights pretty soon. Of course, we would like to see who Ilia Topuria fights soon. Hopefully we'll get that by December, before the end of the year. At least get information on it if we don't get an announcement by before, or the fight actually happens before the end of the year. At least hopefully we get an announcement. But we'll see. We'll see. You have Armin, legitimate contenders. You have Armin, Max, Charles, Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Patty, Fiziev you can throw in there, and maybe you can even throw either Rufi or BSD in there, whoever wins the fight. There's a lot of legitimate contenders at the lightweight division. There's just a lot of those fighters that I mentioned don't have fights booked. We just need to see fights get booked. Dana probably announces more fights in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, I hope so. I probably would agree with that. I do think we need to hear some announcements for the UFC Noche card. There have been a couple pullouts on that card, and on top of the fact that the card is just terrible. So I'm assuming we'll hear 1, maybe 2 more fight announcements. And usually when the UFC books fights late like this, they're usually pretty solid fights. Like, they're not going to be amazing fights like a Pantoja, not Pantoja, sorry. It's not going to be like a Moreno is going to be on the card or something big like that, but it's probably going to be fights that are pretty solid. Maybe like an Adrian Yanez will be added to the card last second. I did hear that he has exciting fight news, so maybe he is on that card for UFC Noche, and he'll be a good addition. He's usually an exciting fighter. So maybe a fight like that could be added to the card, 1 or maybe 2 more fights. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that card is not this Saturday, it's the Saturday after that. The card's looking rough. Main event is great with Gene Silva and Diego Lopez. But outside of that, there's really not much. Rahul Rosas had to pull out, so I believe it's Rob Font and somebody else. I don't remember who Font's fighting, but he's fighting somebody, so he stays on the card. But besides that, like, Cedric Dumas versus Zachary Reese, is that the second most exciting fight in the card? Chairez versus Costa, that actually could be a fun fight. I do believe Kelvin Gastelum's on the card, so that's usually fun. But Rafa Garcia, Jared Gordon, maybe could be fun, possibly. I feel like we're grasping at straws here, but we'll see. The card could be better in actuality than it looks on paper. But I hope we get at least 1 more, 2 more fight announcements just to bolster the card a little bit more. It isn't an arena at the end of the day, and the UFC is trying to sell tickets at the end of the day. And I don't think they're going to be able to sell that many tickets with the current card they have. So we'll see. Fall's my favorite time. Yeah, fall is usually great. Like all sports in general, start up in the fall usually. And obviously, the UFC usually gets better in the fall. This year, it happens to be the case, and honestly, most years it happens to be the case. So, yeah, fall time is usually pretty good for sports in general, especially the UFC. As we start to see a lot of these good cards get put together in terms of pay-per-views, a lot of these pay-per-views we have coming up that are already announced are actually really good cards, really good fights, as well as these fight nights. It seems like at this point, the UFC and Dana White are finally listening to the fans a little bit. They're not going to the Apex nearly as much as they have been. We don't actually have an Apex card booked until the end of the year. Maybe we'll see one pop up, but at this point, I don't believe there's any Apex cards announced till the end of the year. So that's definitely a good thing. I also heard that the UFC is going to look to bolster the attendance at the Apex. And if they do that, I don't think people are going to have much of a problem with the UFC going back to the Apex. As I heard, they're going to try to make the Apex be able to hold like 5,000 fans or something like that, 5 or 10,000 fans. Which will significantly change the venue. If you have that many people at the Apex, as I said, I don't think people will complain about that. The crowds will be there. And if they go to the Apex once or even twice a month, honestly, I don't think people will complain that much with that sort of capacity. Of course, you still prefer them to go to arenas. Obviously, a regular arena is much better than the Apex, even with a higher capacity. But still, at the very least, 1 Apex card a month or something like that in a 5,000 fan capacity sort of arena, I think makes sense or would be fine for most fans. I wish they gave Joe Piper a better opponent than the guy who's born. Yeah. Yeah, who's Piper even fighting? I don't even know. Um, I know he is fighting soon, but I completely forgot who he's fighting. Let's see, Joe Piper. Is it listed? Oh, Busner Magomedov, yeah. He's actually very exciting in the first round. He just gasses out very significantly. And I guess in his last fight, he didn't even look exciting in the first round. So we'll see where Abus looks. But I'm assuming he's just going to get ran over by Joe Piper here. Abus always, as I said, he always gasses out. And yeah, he'll probably do the same in this fight. And Joe will probably get him later, maybe. But the first round of that fight, I think, actually will be very exciting. Both the guys are going to be throwing power shots, and Abus is actually exciting in the first round. That's what I love about anime. They don't have seasons like football. So yeah, that is very true. Of course, you have times like usually with the UFC in the first 3 months of the year, January, February, March. Usually those times are not amazing. You could get cards that are good in those months, but usually they're not amazing. And usually the fall is usually when we get the best cards. But still, the UFC and MMA in general does go year long, which is great to see. But yeah, I agree with you. I do like it that all year long there's always fights going on. Piper Sunday, yeah. Busner Magomedov, he's fine. MVP Piper would have been better. Yeah, probably. But we'll see. Let's see. Piper's not ranked, right? No. No, he's not. And Abus is ranked? No. No, yeah. So I think they're just trying to give him an unranked guy here. As they're definitely pushing Joe Piper along pretty slowly. So I think they're just giving him another unranked guy to get his confidence up, maybe make some improvements in the fight, and then who knows, maybe he can get a guy like MVP in the future. We shall see. But yeah, would be interesting. Would be interesting. But yeah, what else we got here? Let's go. I just keep seeing that Tony Ferguson won his fight. It's tremendous. It's so crazy seeing Tony Ferguson won a fight in 2025, especially a fight that everybody thought he would lose, including myself. So just happy for Tony. Really good win. But yeah, great job from Tony. Let's run it in Misfits. Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson in boxing. Honestly, that would be pretty cool, but I'm assuming that Dustin would probably piece up Tony at that point. But yeah, honestly, Misfits is kind of doing a solid thing over there. I'm not going to watch all the fights, obviously, or most of the cards I'm not going to watch. But when there's cards like this where there's former MMA guys, I'll watch it. And this card turned out to be pretty good. And it was also perfect timing because obviously there was no UFC card this weekend. So it kind of, scratched that itch of watching fights this weekend. So I'm happy that they put on the card and it was fun. Turned out to be a pretty good card, actually. What are you gonna do? I believe MVP fights one more time this year. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. He's kind of at 2 weight classes. I don't know what weight class he wants to stay at this point. Maybe he wants to stay at middleweight. After his win over Jared Cannonier was a pretty good win. He's number 10 in the middleweight rankings at this point. I don't know if he wants to move back down to welterweight or stay at middleweight. We'll see. But I've said this a lot. I think MVP is a really difficult stylistic matchup for a lot of guys, especially if you can't wrestle. He's a really difficult fight for you. On the feet, he's just very tricky, and I think he gives problems to a lot of guys. Maybe could even do MVP versus Izzy, potentially. There's some fights for sure at middleweight for MVP. It's just he does have that weakness. If you are able to wrestle and you are able to find takedowns on this guy, you'll probably be able to win. But on the feet, he's very, very tricky. And I think we've seen that in all of his fights, to be honest. Guys have a lot of trouble striking with MVP. Even Ian Gary, who I talked about a lot, I know people don't like him, but still, he does a really good job at kind of nullifying what his opponents do well. Even he had a lot of trouble with MVP on the feet. He actually wanted no part of the striking with MVP. MVP should come back in the December card. Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. Um, and we'll see. Maybe you do MVP Izzy for that December card. Why not? But we'll see. MVP and Izzy are friends. They expressing one. Okay. Well, there goes that. um, but yeah. So then, if Izzy's out of the picture, if he is going to fight at middleweight, maybe you could do MVP versus Robert Whitaker. Maybe what a weird fight that would be. But maybe you could do that. Or maybe you could do MVP of the loser of Imavov and Kaio potentially, or you could do MVP versus Strickland. That would be a really weird fight. Um, but I don't know. We'll see. It depends on how much the UFC wants to push this guy. He does have kind of a fun style, like at times, but I would argue that his style is not that exciting. Just because he kind of like waits around until he finds one big right hand, which a lot of times does land, but at the same time, he doesn't have that much power. And I don't know. I would argue he's not the most exciting fighter in the world, but he could be exciting. He's a fighter that could be exciting, but not always is. And plus, I don't think Izzy would be that exciting. Yeah, probably not, honestly. Um, Probably not. There you go. Strickland versus MVP in December. Yeah, I guess you could do that, but probably wouldn't be exciting either. I mean, both of these guys are really not exciting fighters, if we're being honest. Strickland isn't, and I don't personally don't think MVP is either. But yeah, I mean, you can put that fight together. But as I said, it kind of just depends on how highly the UFC perceives MVP to be, or how much they want to push him. If they really want to push him, yeah, give him Sean Strickland. I mean, if MVP beats Strickland, who's number 3, he's very close to a title shot. But if the UFC doesn't really want to push MVP that much, maybe they give him some other guys that are a little bit lower in the rankings, like a Robert Whitaker, who's number 8 at this point, or something like that. Yeah, because Strickland would be a big push for MVP. Because Strickland did say they would return in December. Yeah, he's suspended though. No, is he able to come back in MSG for MSG, or is he not? I don't know. But yeah, whenever he's able to come back, I'm assuming he'll be willing to fight essentially anybody. So yeah, maybe you could do Strickland versus MVP. I mean, as I said, that's not a fight that I'll be super excited about, but it is a contender fight for sure at the division, and it'll be a fight that probably would be on the main card of a pay-per-view, most likely, something like that. But as I said, it really depends on how much the UFC wants to push MVP. That's really what it comes down to. He's not a young guy, and he's not the most exciting fighter in the world, so it does depend. This is obviously a troll tweet. Someone tweeted online, "Is Hamzat is what we expected Alex Pereira to be," and it's just a troll tweet. It's got to be. Yeah. And give MVP custom shorts. Yeah, I agree. He probably should get custom shorts, especially as he does rack up the wins. A lot of these guys are starting to get it. I do like the whole custom shorts thing. It is a pretty cool thing that the UFC does for these guys, giving them some more personality. And outside of a couple, I would say most of the custom shorts are really cool. The only ones that I don't really like are Hamzat's. I don't really like his custom shorts. And I think there's one other. Charles Oliveira's is like okay. But some of the custom shorts are fire. Like Trigus' custom shorts, I think, are fire. I think Ilya Taporia's custom shorts are fire. And there's probably guys I'm forgetting about. But there's definitely examples of really cool ones. So overall, I like the concept of custom shorts. MVP must be on there now, but he still is. Yeah, he is. He definitely is a name. But as I said, he's like very hit or miss in terms of an exciting fight or not. Like his fight against Kevin Holland was really exciting. Then his fight against Ian Gary wasn't, which in part was Ian Gary's fault, but still, it also falls in the part of MVP. And his fight against Shara Bullet was very boring, I would argue. MVP for Shara. So it's very hit or miss on how exciting MVP is going to be. And I believe because of that, he's not going to be that big of a star. But we'll see. I think we'll see what the UFC does, obviously. But if they don't do Strickland and they give him, let's just say, Robert Whitaker for their sake of an example, and he beats Robert Whitaker, then at that point, I think the UFC will push him and give him like a Sean Strickland or a top 5 guy, top 3 guy maybe at the weight class. And if he beats that guy, he'll probably get a title shot. That's most likely how I see his career planning out at this point. And if he gets a title shot, it's probably not going to go that well. But We'll see. I mean, MVP versus Hamzat is like a nightmare matchup for MVP. Um, but yeah, I mean, if the fight stays on the feet, yeah, I guess he'll land shots. He'll give problems to Hamzat, but let's be honest, it's not going to be held on the feet. Hamzat's going to shoot a takedown pretty early, and he's probably going to get it pretty easily. So he'll be fine. He'll probably get a finish in the first round, and it would be a funny fight if that ever did end up happening. Um, but yeah. I think MVP because I'm sure it should be black with England, Jamaica flag on it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't mind that. That'd be cool. That'd be cool for sure. Yeah, I do think he probably deserves custom shorts. I mean, he is definitely a name that people know, so why not? Especially if he's able to get more wins, give him custom shorts. Why not? And yeah, more and more people are definitely getting it. And yeah, it should be a requirement if you fight for the belt, you get it. I think more or less it's kind of what's been happening lately. But yeah. Um, Shavkat deserves a pair too. Yeah, he does. He definitely does. Definitely does. If he ever does fight for the belt, which I think he will eventually, I mean, he needs one more win probably to fight for the belt. And if he's able to do that, he'll most likely get custom shorts, maybe even without fighting for the belt. Maybe he'll get custom shorts in his next fight. Who knows? Shavkat's a really exciting fighter. His name is pretty big as well. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll probably get shorts. Yeah, most likely. Yeah. This is someone saying this online. I think it makes sense actually. Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal in boxing. Why not? That could be a fight they put together. The rematch in boxing this time. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm just excited about this card. Excited about this card overall for this UFC Paris card. We're getting back to really good UFC. Really good UFC. Shavkat shorts should be something about light bar for 8 shorts. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Custom shorts is a pretty cool thing that the UFC does for a lot of these guys. For show. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Let's see. Are we missing anything? Let me do a quick check on Twitter to see if we're missing anything, any news or anything. No. Billy Golf calls out Mickey Gall to fight in UFC 322 Madison Square Garden. When was the last time Mickey Gall fought? He won, right? I believe it was like a year ago or something like that. And before that, it's been forever. Not a very active fighter, Mickey Gall, but might be fighting on the MSG card. We'll see. Yeah, someone talking about Max Holloway becoming champ again. It is very possible that Max does become champ again. He's really not that far off from it. Probably one more win, and Topuria moving up weight class would probably get him another title shot. And I do think he has a really good chance to beat a lot of the guys at 155. Just the only guys that I think he'll have trouble with, which unfortunately will probably be the guys that I think will have the belt, would be Ilia Topuria as well as Arman Tsarukyan. I think both of those guys give a lot of trouble to Max. But besides that, I think a lot of the other guys at 155, Max actually could have a lot of success against. Like Charles Oliveira, I think Max Holloway beats him. Justin Gaethje already beat him. Dan Hooker, I think Max Holloway would beat Dan. Paddy Pimblett, I think Max would beat Paddy. Gamrot could be potentially tough for Max, but I do think eventually Max figures it out and beats Gamrot. Dariushi beats him. There's a lot of guys at lightweight that I think Max Holloway would beat. As I said, just the only guys that I think give him trouble are probably Tsarukyan as well as Ilia. But unfortunately for Max Holloway, Arman probably will be champ, I believe, if Ilia moves up a weight class. And for Ilia, he's currently the champion. So, yeah, it's unfortunate for Max. But we'll see. Maybe he could surprise us. Maybe he could beat some of those guys. We shall see. Joshua, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Just talking about Tony. Somehow Tony won the fight. Good performance from Tony. Happy for him getting a win in 2025. Darren Till absolutely destroyed Luke Rockhold. And we have UFC Paris this upcoming weekend. So good stuff. Overall, I would say I was pretty happy with the Misfits card. Obviously, no UFC yesterday. And the Misfits card kind of kind of was pretty good, to be honest. It's not a promotion that I'm going to watch all the time. Usually they kind of just have BS fights, but if they have fights like this, former MMA, UFC guys fighting there, um, I'll watch it. So it was good. It was definitely good overall, and the results of it, I was very happy with. Tony Ferguson winning, Dylan Dennis winning very quickly, as well as Darren Till absolutely destroying Luke Rockhold. I don't have anything against Luke Rockhold, but that was a very exciting performance from Darren Till. So good card overall. And for Paris, we got good fights, obviously, on the card. Imavov Kaio, BSD Rufi, even Paul Craig Bukauskas is fun. Ziam is kind of a good contender. We'll see what he's about. Pitbull versus Kieda. Kieda is a new fighter, new addition to the UFC. We'll see how he does against Pitbull. A lot of people are very high on him. Gomes is on the card, who's a solid fighter. Habero is usually exciting. Sai is not, but Habero is usually exciting. Ante is on the card, former LFA champion. So we'll see how he does against Tybura. Potentially new blood to the heavyweight division. Hopefully he does well. And Sam Patterson's on the card. Gustafsson versus Fakardinov is going to be a fun fight. Very low level fight, but a very fun fight, I think. And yeah. Think Dylan Dennis is UFC level. Yeah, actually, yeah. His striking is not good, obviously. It's never been good, but his grappling is legitimately elite. I know he fought a literal plumber in that fight, and he submitted him immediately. I don't think that tells you that much about Dylan Dennis, actually, but we've known it. That his jiu-jitsu is actually very good, and maybe if Dylan Dennis can fight somebody a little bit of higher level competition in MMA, maybe if it is Tony Ferguson or it is somebody else, I don't know who it would be, in MMA, and he submits them and has a good performance. Who knows? Maybe the UFC will take a look at him, give him a chance in the Contender Series or something like that. But yeah, I mean, he is very one-dimensional, which is not a great look, but that one dimension is actually like very elite for Dylan Dennis. And if you can somewhat improve his striking a little bit, maybe you can have success with the company. So if I had to say, I'd probably say, yeah, I'd probably say he is UFC caliber. Is he a championship caliber? Definitely not. But he is probably UFC caliber, like an unranked guy. Maybe can get a couple wins, get into the bottom half of the rankings. I don't think he does much better than that, but I do think he could make the UFC if he got an opportunity on the Contender Series, or they just flat out signed him. I believe if Ferguson was still in his prime fighting in the lightweight division, he would have been a hard fight for lightweight too. Oh yeah. He would have been a hard fight for a lot of people. Prime Tony Ferguson with his pressure, with his volume, just never going away. Obviously he was different, but he had a similar style to a Marab, just, with his pressure, tiring you out, and not with the takedowns, but with the strikes. And Prime Tony Ferguson is a difficult fight for, I think, anybody in any era currently or in any era. Usually when you talk about guys from the past, they're usually not as good as the current fighters. But for Tony Ferguson, I feel like he's one of those examples that he's really good back in the day, obviously in his prime, but also even at this point, he would still be really good in a really difficult matchup for most guys. So yeah, Prime Tony is legit. The dude who's fighting Pitbull and Friends, the champion of the promotion. Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard he's a very highly touted prospect. I've personally never watched him, so I don't want to pretend like I have, but I'm excited to see how he does against Pitbull, who's a solid fighter at this point in his career. So we'll see how he performs. And as I said, whenever you add new blood, new fighters to these weight classes, it always makes the weight classes better, assuming these guys are good, which I'm hoping he probably is. And yeah, it just leads to more matchups, more matchmaking, makes fighters better, fighting higher level competition. It's always a good thing overall. So I'm excited about it. And especially on this Paris card, we also have a new guy coming in to the heavyweight division. Hopefully he's good, fighting Tybura. So we'll see. And I talked about this a million times, but the heavyweight division needs a lot of help. So whatever help they can possibly get from the Contender Series, from other organizations, they definitely need to go in the direction of signing guys. So this Paris card kind of adds a couple new guys to the UFC potentially. It adds them to the UFC, but potential contenders to the UFC. We'll see how they do. Prime Tony would have been a hard fight for Topuria too. Yeah, as I said, he's probably a tough fight for everybody. That's an interesting fight. I haven't thought about it. Who would actually win that fight? Prime Tony versus Topuria. I don't know. I mean, Tony has an amazing chin. His pressure is going to be there. It's going to be hard for Topuria to pressure Prime Tony Ferguson. So it's an interesting fight. Maybe Topuria would look to grapple a little bit more in that fight than what he normally does. I don't know. That's an interesting fight for sure. It definitely would be a difficult fight for Topuria. Maybe Topuria still finds a way. I don't know. I don't know. Tony was very hittable though, I will say that, which would have not been great for Tony, but I don't know. I think Prime Tony would have beaten Yeah, probably. Probably. Yeah, that's probably true actually. Prime Tony was such a legend though, so it was really good to see him get a win in uh in 2025. Um I think Prime Tony would have beaten Taporia. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. But yeah, the things that I don't like about Prime Tony, I will say, is he is very hittable, which is something you don't like to see when going up against Taporia with his boxing, with his power. But the pressure of Prime Tony would be definitely something to worry about for Taporia. So I don't know. I haven't thought about it personally. I don't know. I guess I would have to think about it a little bit more. Maybe early on, I still lean with Taporia, but definitely an interesting fight and something that's not like a very clear fight. So in an ideal world, yeah, that would be great if we could put that fight together. But obviously, Tony's nowhere near his prime, isn't in the UFC, and he's not going to be there anytime soon either. Brian Battle disrespected the fuck out of the UFC and made a way to wig after being cut. Yeah. It's so funny to see that he just made weight so easily at the same weight class that he would have fought at the UFC and missing weight in the UFC. And just, yeah, it was weird. But whatever, I guess he's carving out a new lane for himself. It is kind of weird, though, to see Brian Battle. Like, Brian Battle is a legitimate, really good fighter. He's like a top 15 guy, top 20 guy in the world. And he goes to fight a literal bum in another promotion. So it was weird to see. He finished him very, very easily and very quickly. So I don't know what was going on with Brian Battle, why he missed weight, and why he was able to make weight so easily after. Maybe it was an eye-opening sort of moment for Brian Battle, and maybe he'll just continue to make weight at this point and get back on track. But based on his history, I'd probably say that's not the case. He'll probably miss weight a couple more times before his career's all said and done. And whatever. Definitely deserved to get cut from the UFC, but we'll see what he decides to do next. If I'm bad, I would say F the UFC and not come back. I mean, he definitely deserves to be cut from the UFC, 100%. I mean, missing weight that many times back to back after moving up a weight class, but so it was 100% Brian Battle's fault why he got cut. There's no blame on the UFC at all for cutting him, but yeah, if he doesn't want to come back and he wants to do other stuff and try to make money elsewhere, fighting lower level competition, then sure, feel free to do that. He'll beat basically anybody in dirty boxing at his weight class. I don't think there's any real competition for him there, so he can continue to do that. I don't know how much he's getting paid for it, but if he's happy with the pay, he can certainly continue to do that. Or he can, look to sign with the PFL or a different organization like that. I don't know. Or maybe the UFC signs him down the line if he gets a bunch of wins under his belt. Who knows? But yeah, he's got to make weight, which I feel like he's not going to. He beat a DoorDash. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, he literally beat up a can. So it was weird matchmaking going from Ruzaboyev, who's a solid fight, not the best fighter in the world, but still a pretty good fighter, to a literal DoorDash driver. It's kind of funny to see that sort of difference in opponents for Brian Battle, but it's up to him what he wants to do. It's up to him. I'm not even lying, by the way. Yeah, no, I believe it. He definitely looked like it. I mean, it seemed like he didn't know what he was doing in there for one, completely outclassed. And then for two, he kind of just gave up. But yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. I don't think dirty boxing really has any competition for Brian Battle, though. So, but who knows? Maybe that's what Brian wants. Maybe he just wants to fight guys that he's clearly better than, get a bunch of wins, maybe make a decent amount of money. I'm assuming he's not getting paid that much in dirty boxing, but maybe he's just trying to get a couple easy wins over there. He's a 4-point Andor. Let's go. At least he has that going for him. Let's go. But I guess for him, he got an opportunity. I don't know how much he got paid, as I said, but he got an opportunity to fight Brian Battle, and he took it. So good for him. Remember when John has Stone Linebacker? He was covered. This is the mission not making weight. Yeah. But listen, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're not a fan of the UFC, like a couple of times. I don't know. But listen, if you miss weight, there are a lot of things you can say about the UFC treating some guys unfairly, which I completely agree with. But if you miss weight, getting cut is completely fair game in my eyes. You listen, you're a professional, you have to make weight. Guy, it just shows how important it is when these guys get cut. Obviously, guys like Connor and Dustin Poirier and some other examples have never missed weight, and that should be something that um, you know is talked about more, I guess, which it is. But when guys miss weight, you're definitely it's definitely possible that you get cut, and if you get cut, you can't blame anybody else but yourself. So, um, but yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing John Lang back in the UFC. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Um, I agree with fighters getting going. Yeah, 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 for sure. We've seen a couple of examples of it. Obviously, for Brian Battle, it wasn't a good look that he missed weight back to back, and he moved up a weight class and still missed weight. So probably fair. I personally thought that he wouldn't get cut. I thought he'd get one more opportunity, but the UFC decided to cut him, and I'm not, against it or anything. He definitely deserved to. Tony never won anything because he's considered losses. Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. He got cut because he's on a ridiculous loss streak, not because he missed weight. Um, but yeah, Tony never missed weight either. Definitely a professional for sure. And yeah, as I said, good to see Tony get back in the win column here. We'll see if he decides to fight again or anything like that. Part of me kind of wants to see Tony just retire at this point. I know for a fact that he's not, but part of me kind of just wants to see him retire at this point. Retire on a win, ride off into the sunset, enjoy the rest of your life. You're a legend. You've done, basically not everything, but you've done a lot, obviously, in the sport of MMA, and you just got to win in boxing here. So why not just retire? But I know for a fact that Tony Ferguson is going to continue fighting, and hopefully he gets matchups that he'll win. But I don't know. I don't know who would fight. I don't know if he's going to continue to box or is he going to do MMA versus Dylan Dennis. I have no idea. But as I said, I kind of just want to see this guy retire. I don't want to see him take another loss and go on another loss streak in boxing or in Misfits. So, yeah. But with all that being said, I will say I thought he looked better for sure in this boxing fight than he's done and looked in a really long time. But also the level of competition was a lot lower. So it's a part of it. UFC, then Volk versus Murphy main event potentially. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. I would like to see Taporia be on that card, but there's not a lot of movement at 155. I don't know who they want to give next for Taporia. So if Taporia is not on that card, I think actually we'll probably see what you're saying. I think it's very likely that that's the card. Volk versus Murphy is a fight that obviously is going to be made next, with Murphy coming off that big KO victory over Pico, and yeah, for Pantoja Van, I'm very confident that Pantoja versus Van will be on that card in December. So, yeah, I could see that being the card, and it would be a pretty good card as well if that turns out to be. Tony Ferguson is going to be like a boxing legend. We're not going to retire for boxing. Well, yeah, he may fight for a long time. Will he have a lot of success? I don't know, but he may fight for a while. I hope he doesn't, though. He's going to fight until he turns into Chuck Liddell. Yeah. Yeah, he's not too far off. Well, I don't know if I want to say that. I mean, he did look a lot better, as I said, in this boxing fight than he looked in some of his other performances, more recent performances in MMA. And obviously, it's a different sport, different level of competition. But I guess he looked a little bit better. But yeah, I hope Tony just retires. But I know for a fact he won't. Yeah. But by the way, MB, if that's the card for UFC 323. The rest of this year is going to be really good. The New York card is already looking really good. JDM and Islam. Listen, there is definitely excitement for that fight, JDM and Islam, but I actually think there should be more excitement for that fight, considering how good it is. It's a legitimate super fight. It's two guys that have been, undefeated for a really long time, really long win streaks for both of them. And it's just a huge fight. I just think a big reason for why guys are not more excited for that fight is because of the fact that because everybody wanted Islam versus Ilya. But regardless of the Islam versus Ilya fight, JDM versus Islam fight in a vacuum is a huge fight. So that's going to be a great one. The rest of the card looks pretty good for New York, the couple of fights that we already have announced. And for December, I'm assuming, very confident, Pantoja Van will be on the card. And if it's Volk versus Murphy as the main event, that's also a great fight. So that card is probably going to be pretty good as well. So we're in good hands for the rest of the year in terms of pay-per-views, in terms of fight nights that we have announced, and some that we don't even have announced yet. I'm assuming they're going to go back to Orlando in December. Usually they do. So Good stuff. Good stuff for sure. Honestly, I like Taporia being the first Bailey. Maybe January Taporia. Yeah, I don't mind that as well. I don't mind that as well. Maybe it would honestly have to be that for the UFC to figure out who's going to be next to fight Taporia. But yeah, I don't mind that either. Taporia is obviously a big star already at this point, and if he's the first fight on Paramount, I talked about this before, but now that the UFC is moving to Paramount, there's going to be a lot of people that are just. I don't know how many people own Paramount. It's not one of the most popular ones, but streaming platforms. But it definitely is relatively popular. People have it that don't follow the UFC. So there's definitely going to be some people on there that don't follow the UFC, but see that, there's a live UFC event going on. They decide to tune in and become a fan because of that. So having a guy like Taporia on that first event for Paramount, first pay-per-view event for Paramount could be pretty good. It could definitely build the star power of Taporia. Could definitely bring more fans into the sport for the UFC, and it does make a lot of sense. So yeah, I am assuming they're probably going to want to look to put on a pretty good card for that initial pay-per-view fight for Paramount. So we shall see. And yeah, for Taporia, I think it's likely he fights either in December or January, probably one of those 2 months. Maybe February, but probably December or January. And then for Nunes Harrison, co-main, yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of times women's MMA is not that exciting, but I actually think that fight is actually pretty exciting for women's MMA. Probably the most exciting fight you could put together for women's MMA, in my personal opinion. I know they are doing Shevchenko versus Wei Li, which is also going to be a pretty good fight, but I think the most exciting fight is probably Harrison versus Nunes. And Taporia versus whoever, it doesn't really matter. Taporia versus whoever, and Nunes versus Harrison as the co-main would be a pretty good card. Pretty good event for the first Paramount card. I don't know why the UFC didn't give it some anime theme shorts. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of happy they did them personally. But my anime hater maybe, but I think his shorts are pretty cool. I think they're pretty cool. What do you think the new what I think it should be, like minimum pay. I mean, right now it's what is it, 10 and 10 or 12 and 12, whatever it is now. What I think it should be is probably like 50 and 50 or something like that. It's not going to be that. Maybe 40 and 40, but it's not going to be that. I'm assuming it's going to be so let's say it's 10 and 10 right now. It's probably going to be like 15 and 15 or something like that. Maybe if they're lucky, it'll be 20 and 20. If they're lucky, but highly, highly unlikely. It'll probably be 15 and 15 is what I'm assuming. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously the UFC is getting a lot more money, so we'd like to see a bigger boost for the fighters. I know they are looking to boost what's it called? Performance bonuses. So that's good to see. But in terms of base pay for newcomers, probably going to be like 15-15 or something like that. Luke got pulled to sleep. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. Darren Till is kind of figuring out a pretty nice lane for himself, just boxing. He's a legitimate, really good boxing. People forget, man, that Darren Till is like 44-0 or something ridiculous in Muay Thai. So he's obviously a great striker. I mean, we've known that forever that he's a great striker, but just boxing, not needing to worry about takedowns or anything like that. He's having a lot of success, and Luke just had no chance against him, honestly. And it was a very easy performance from Darren Till. Literally just jab, left, straight. That was it. That's all he needed. He dropped him, hurt him a couple times in the fight, and finished him with a nice combination and put him out badly, really badly. But happy to see that Luke Rockhold is fine after that. 15 to win. 10K to show being realistic. Probably, yeah. I could see that. Maybe if they're lucky, maybe they do 15-15, just to give them a little bit of a bump. But yeah, I could see 15 and 10. Tony got it. Yep. Very happy for Tony getting that victory. He basically did it with improved head movement, which is kind of weird to see this stage in his career, but improved head movement and pressure. That's really how he got it done. And he was able to put a combination together at that finishing sequence. The stoppage was horrible. If we're being totally honest, it was absolutely horrible, but still, who cares? Tony got the victory, and we all go home happy. So happy for Tony getting the victory there. He looked better than he's looked in a while, honestly, which is interesting to see. and he got the victory there. So good one for him. Dylan won. Yeah, Dylan, I know he gets a lot of hate, but he's actually like a very elite jiu-jitsu practitioner. And he fought a guy that has little to no experience at all. So he kind of just showed him levels and he took him down immediately. It was kind of weird to see that guy shoot in for a takedown or shoot into the clinch against Dennis. Very low fight IQ, but yeah, he got submitted immediately after that, and easy victory for Dylan. For Dylan, I would like to see him not box anymore ever. Just continue to fight in MMA. If he continues to stay with them or looks for a different organization, we'll see. But I think he should continue to fight MMA, and he could be solid. I mean, his striking is really not good, but his jiu-jitsu is elite, so he could be solid. It just needs to make some improvements, and he needs to fight more, most importantly. I was thinking of some. See, see. Sure. We can do that. Till only 33. People forget, man. Yeah, it is crazy that Till's only 33, and obviously he wasn't cut from the UFC. He was asked to be released, and he's kind of cutting out a nice lane for himself. I saw a lot of people say Till should resign with the UFC. Honestly, maybe it's up to him. I do think the UFC probably would welcome him back, considering how good he's been looking. But one thing that I do want to say is he's looking really good in boxing because there's only striking. If he moved back to the UFC and fought MMA again, he does still need to worry about the takedowns, and that is what's it called? That is definitely a pretty big issue for him. Stopping takedowns has always been his weak his weak point in MMA, and the fact that he's been boxing for a year or however long he's been boxing for is not going to improve those abilities. It's only going to make them worse. He's not really training takedown defense at this point. So we'll see. But if he ever wanted to sign back with the UFC, I would be all for it. I'm assuming the UFC would be for it as well. But it's all up to Till. I mean, honestly, if I'm Till, I probably wouldn't be rushing to go back to the UFC. He's winning easily in a lot of these fights, and he's making a lot of money. Dana said he's not going to get rid of the pay-per-views like we thought. Yeah, I did see that, but it's going to be different. So there's probably, because what I heard Dana said is going into this Paramount deal, there's going to be 4 like huge cards. And the White House card being one of those. They're probably going to be like similar to UFC 300 level cards, which is actually great news for the fans. But I'm assuming those kind of cards are still going to be pay-per-view. Unfortunately, I hope they're not, but it's seeming like they will still be pay-per-view cards. At least at this point, we'll see when they get announced, and we'll get a better picture. But for normal pay-per-view cards, like number cards that used to be pay-per-views, I don't think they're going to be pay-per-views anymore. I think they're all going to be free, which is good news. So even if that does turn out to be the case, what I said, 4 pay-per-view cards a year, it sucks. Of course, we want pay-per-views to completely go away. But even if that is the case, 4 pay-per-view cards is better than 13. So it is a step in the right direction, but still is annoying if that does turn out to be the case. So obviously, we would all prefer it to be no pay-per-views whatsoever. Do an impression of Darren Till. Marvin Vittori. Marvin. Nah, I have such a bad Darren Till, actually. I always joke around with that impression. My friends are like, oh, dude, that's fucking horrible. But I always do that impression. It's hilarious. Marvin Vittori. But I know it's really bad. But Till signed with the UFC, if ever it's anything. Yeah. He's been fighting forever. Obviously, Muay Thai before that. Now boxing. He's still pretty young. He got into fighting pretty early. So, yeah. Protest fighting 3 times this year. Yep, he's very active, which is great to see. You like to see guys like that, like Joshua Van, like Protez. Van is kind of in a league, within himself. But you like to see guys that are having success and also very active, like Protez has been. So good for him. It's a great way to fast track your way to a title shot, which he is doing. He's fighting Leon Edwards in New York. And if he is able to beat Leon Edwards, which I do think he will, title shot could be next after that. What is Leon? Leon is ranked, like 4 or something? Leon is ranked number 4, yeah. So if he beats Leon, his next fight could be for the title. I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys at that weight class that deserve a title pretty soon. Like Sean Brady is close to a title shot. Shafkat is close to a title shot. Even Kamaru Usman is close to a title shot with 1 more win. Ian Gary potentially. Morales with 1 more win potentially. There's a lot of guys that I think could get a title shot quickly, but because Carlos Prates is so active, and because he is fighting a top 5 guy, number 4 guy actually, in Leon Edwards, if he beats him, I think a title shot probably would be in his next fight, especially if he knocks out Leon. Um, but we'll see. What announced fights are you most excited for? Let's see. I'm really excited for Gene Silva Lopez. I think that's going to be a really fun fight. I think Gene wins it though. But most excited for is probably Roundtree Yuri. That's a fight that I'm most excited for, just because it's a fight between two guys that are obviously really good fighters at the light heavyweight division. Both guys have fought for the belt. Yuri was a champion, and for Khalil, he's done a good job at just kind of reinventing himself and being very successful as of late. But that fight, I think, is almost guaranteed to be a banger. I think whoever lands first is probably going to win the fight. But both guys do a lot of things really well. So I think it's almost guaranteed to be a really fun fight. So that would probably be my answer. But other fights that I'm personally really excited about is Charles Oliveira versus Fiziev. I think that's going to be a really fun fight. I actually think Figueiredo versus Montel Jackson is going to be great. Montel Jackson's a really good fighter. People forget, man, that Montel is actually a really good fighter. He's just not very active. So that's a fight that I'm really excited about. What else do we got? RDR versus Fluffy. That's a really, really big one. I'm super excited for that fight. What else? Aspinall versus Gane. I'm personally not that excited about it, but seeing Aspinall fight again is always fun. Volkov versus Almeida. I'm actually pretty excited about that fight. Rakic versus Murzakanov. Murzakanov is fun. JDM versus Islam is a really exciting fight. Leon versus Prates, really exciting. Even Shevchenko versus Weili is fun. Honestly, I know I gave you a lot of answers. My number one answer would be Yuri Roundtree, but there's a lot of really good fights that are coming up in the fall and fights that I'm really excited about. Yuri always gives me big fight feels. True or for sure. Yeah. Whenever he's in a fight, as I said, I mean, this is true for some guys, but especially for Yuri, whenever he fights out there, he's never in a boring fight. If you look back at his fight between Glover Teixeira and Yuri, that's an all-time fight, and that's not the only example of a great fight that Yuri has been in. He's always in exciting fights. Even when he loses against Alex Pereira, those were fun fights as well. So Yuri is certainly a warrior, win or lose. And yeah, that fight is going to be huge for sure. It's going to be a big fight feels for sure. Lopez said he's going to get wait, he's going to finish. I'm heavily leaning with Gene Silva. I'm like 96% or maybe not, let's say 90% sure that Gene Silva is going to win the fight, but we'll see. I mean, Lopez does things very well. He's very explosive, hits really hard, and he's really good on the ground. On the ground, he probably could give some issues to Gene Silva, but he doesn't really look to grapple that much, talking about Lopez. And on the feet, I just think Gene Silva is very physical, similar to what Lopez is, but he's very physical. He can take shots from Lopez, I believe, and also he's significantly more technical than Diego Lopez is. So I think he's going to be able to angle change effectively. I think he's going to be able to land big right hands, right straights. He throws a lot of straights and Lopez throws a lot of looping hooks, which we always say straight shots beat looping shots. So I do believe that Gene Silva is going to win the fight. I'm actually pretty confident in that. I'm picking Figgy to beat Jackson. Yeah, that is actually a really good fight. I don't hate that prediction at all. Figgy obviously is coming off a torn knee against Corey Sandhagen, but there's been enough time. I guess he's fully recovered at this point. We'll see how he looks. But Figgy is an elite fighter. People forget, man. Like he's legitimately very elite. On the ground, he's elite. On the feet, obviously, he has great power and is a pretty good striker as well. Jackson is not someone to look over. He's a really good fighter as well. Just not that big of a name because he's not very active, but it's going to be a really good fight. But early prediction, I'd probably slightly lean towards Figgy as well, assuming that his knee is fine. I'll also be leaning towards Leon Edwards to get past Carlos. Yeah, I'm also on the other side of that as well. But obviously, Leon has more experience. I just personally see the fight playing out. Like Leon Edwards is going to be on the back foot, which is how he usually fights, but also that kind of plays into the style of Prates. When you look at Prates, when he gets his finishes, they're almost always, outside of his most recent fight against Jeff Neal with the spinning elbow, they're almost always where his opponents are alongside the cage. And I do believe the majority of the fight is going to be held there, where Leon is behind the black line. And at that point, Carlos does a good job at kind of teeing off on his opponents. And I think if he lands a couple of big shots on Leon will start to lose confidence, and the finish will come soon after that. So I'm personally leaning towards Carlos. Sean Brady's said it's 3 guys. That was fun. Next, yeah, I did hear that. I actually think, Ian Gary could be kind of a difficult fight for Sean. I know they were supposed to fight, and Ian Gary pulled out, I heard, or didn't want to take the fight. Morales is an absolute nightmare matchup, literally the worst matchup in the weight class for Sean Brady. So, in my opinion, at least. So, if Sean Brady does take that fight against Morales, respect to him, I would heavily favor Morales in that one. And then again, Shavkat versus Brady. I also think Shavkat's a tough fight for Brady as well. I'm not super high on Brady. He's a good wrestler. If he's able to get a takedown and get on top, he's great, like we saw against Leon. But his striking is not amazing, although it's okay, but it's not amazing. And his chin is just not good. So I think against some of these other guys like Shavkat and against Morales specifically, I think Brady will have a tough time. Against Ian, he probably could win, but even that matchup I think could be difficult if Ian utilizes a lot of footwork, which he will. I'm leaning towards Lopez. Yeah, that's fair. Well, we'll see how it plays out. It's definitely going to be a fun fight regardless. Lopez has a good chin. I don't see him knocking him out. He does have a really good chin. He actually has a great chin. But any great chin can get cracked at the same time, and it is a 5-round fight. And I think as the fight does progress, Lopez is going to start to gas out a little bit. And the more big shots that that Gene is able to land on Lopez could play a factor. So I agree with you. I don't think that Lopez is going to get knocked out in the first round or whatever, but I do think Lopez will probably get knocked out in the latter half of the fight, maybe around 3, 4, or 5. That's kind of how I see the fight playing out. I really want Reyes to win and get a title shot. I agree. I really, really want him to win as well. I think all the boys are kind of rooting for him. And yeah, I mean, if he wins this fight, he's going to get a title shot, I believe. I mean, he has to. Carlos Ulberg is number 3 in the rankings? Yeah, he's number 3. So getting a win over a top 3 guy should get you a title fight in your next fight. And especially if Dominic Reyes is able to find a finish, which I think there is a real possibility there, he'll probably get a title shot in his next fight. So I think stylistically, it's not a bad matchup for Dominic Reyes. It would be great for him, for his career, considering where he's came from after losing to John Jones in a fight that most people thought he won. And yeah, potentially getting another title shot. And who knows, maybe he could win the title. We'll see. But I'm definitely heavily rooting for Dom. Michael Morales called out Ian Gary and said he doesn't like that guy. Yeah, not too many people like Ian Gary. But yeah, for Morales, personally for me, I'm a big Morales fan. Obviously, personally for me, I want Morales to fight Sean Brady next. I think it's a really good stylistic matchup for Morales, and if he beats Brady, he'll get a title shot in his next fight. But if he fights Ian Gary, that's another fight that does make sense probably. But they are very close in the rankings. So if Morales beats Ian Gary, he's probably not going to get a title shot off that win. So that's kind of why I want to see Sean Brady. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Gene gonna put him to sleep. I agree. I don't think he's gonna get like a first round knockout or something like that. But I do think eventually he'll be able to find a knockout in the latter half of the fight, round 3, 4, or 5. Diego has shown to gas out a little bit in fights, and I think if he's getting pieced up, it's only gonna gas him out more. So yeah. I'm happy people are counting out Lopez and Edwards. It's going to feel good when both those guys both upset. Yeah, we'll see. I'm personally on the opposite side, so we'll see. If you're right, be sure to clip this. I'm picking Reyes to KO Ulberg. Yeah, I early prediction. I would agree with you. I do think I would lean with Reyes, and I do think he could find a KO. For Ulberg, I mean, I know he has a couple wins. I personally thought he lost versus Jan, and I also personally don't think he's that great of a fighter. Personally, he's kind of just just like a leg kicks, jab kind of fighter. He doesn't do that much in the fights. And if the fight is kind of brought to him, he doesn't have a lot of success, which I think is going to be something Reyes does. I think Reyes is going to pressure a lot in this fight. So I definitely could see Reyes landing a big left hand, finding a knockout, and all the boys will rejoice. It'll be a great moment if that is able to happen. And as I said, I don't think Ulberg's that good. So definitely could happen. Morales, Carlos Prates would have been good too. Yeah, it would have been good too. I just think for that sort of matchup, I don't think that the UFC wants to do Morales versus Prates before they fight for the belt. I think if we ever are going to see that matchup, I mean, things can change obviously, but if we're ever going to see that matchup, I think what the UFC would prefer is to have those guys fight for the belt. And obviously, as they're both kind of on the come up at this point, I don't think the UFC wants to destroy one of their stars. Both guys appear to be a star, in my opinion, both Carlos as well as Morales. But I don't think the UFC wants to destroy one of those stars before they make it to the belt. I believe Michael Morales can KO Carlos. Yeah, Yeah, I could see that. I could see that for sure. It'll be a really good fight. I mean, both guys obviously are very long. Both guys have KO power. Both guys are good strikers. I think I would make the argument that Carlos is a more technical striker than Morales is, but Morales is also like huge. He's the biggest guy in the weight class. He cuts so much weight. It's insane how much weight this guy cuts. So obviously his power is going to be benefited because of that. Um, and uh, and yeah, should be good. Should be good. I think we're let's go. Let's go. How's Long Island? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Just came back from a trip. Obviously, we're back to the normal setup, back to the normal schedule. Definitely happy to get back to the normal schedule, talking to you boys, streaming with you boys, and yeah, we're getting back to good fights. Obviously, this weekend, UFC Paris is good. Um, that's pretty cool. Oh, I'm in. Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. How's your trip? It was pretty good. And it's pretty good. I went to Mexico to Playa del Carmen specifically. It was pretty fun. So it's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. How do you like it there, though, Nicaragua? Michael Morales should be at middleweight, probably. Probably should be. Yeah, he's huge. He's huge for the main event, or for the main event for his weight class. But how's Junior fucking Tafa then coming in? Dude, I have no idea. I almost feel like Junior Tafa has something on Dana White or something. How's he getting these opportunities? First of all, how is he still in the UFC for one? And for two, how's he in a co-main event spot? It's insane, bro. I don't get how he's getting this. I don't get how he's getting these opportunities. It is very odd, but um, I don't know. Paris card on early. Yep, it is on early. I will be doing a watch along for it, so be sure to join. I'll be letting you guys know in chat. I'm gonna try to push these out a little bit more when I do these watch alongs on my YouTube post feature. If you guys have seen those, just to get the word out a little bit more. But yes, I will be doing a watch along for the Paris card, so be sure to join if you guys are interested, as well as the contenders Dana White Contender Series card on Tuesday. So be on the lookout. By Cancun, yeah, it's right next to Cancun, like an hour away. It's nice, a lot of mosquitoes. yeah, hot, wet climate. There's a lot of mosquitoes. I went to Mexico once. That's cool. That's cool. I went to Puerto Vallarta. Oh, that's nice. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Are you a part Mexican Jews? No, I'm not. I'm not part Mexican. Just went with the boys. And yeah, it was a good trip. It was a good trip overall. Definitely did some cool things. Checked out a couple different hotels that I haven't been to. Went to some of these parks in the area, which were really fun. A lot of ATVs, zip lines, rivers, kayaks, whatever. A lot of activities. It was fun. It was a good time for sure. But I am definitely happy to be back and getting back into the swing of things with this YouTube channel. It's been fun. It's been fun for sure. Now I live in San Francisco, California. Let's go. Let's go. How is it? I think I talked to you about this before. You live in like a nice area of San Francisco. I know some parts of San Francisco are not amazing, but I heard you live in a nice part of it. So that's pretty cool. San Fran in general is definitely like a very nice climate and a very nice area, or a very nice region, I guess, for the most part. What's your ethnicity, Juice? I don't know if I want to say in this climate, to be honest. I don't know if I want to say. Um, but yeah. Yes, there's definitely bad areas. And then it's yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess like everywhere else, there's nice areas and bad areas. Um, but yeah. But I definitely like the places that have cooler climate. They don't get really hot. Yeah, that's what I've heard from like a lot of people that are from these hot climates. Even when I went to Mexico, a lot of people were complaining about how hot it was, locals. So yeah, me personally, I would probably agree with that. I kind of enjoy New York because of the changing of seasons. In the winter, it's cold. In the summer, it's hot. I kind of enjoy that. You kind of get the best of both worlds, and yeah, I kind of enjoy that. But yeah. San Francisco is my yeah. For sure. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And San Francisco is winter all year. Let's go. It's winter all year. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, compared to Nicaragua, I guess. Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad. Los Angeles is warmer than San Francisco. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure it is. Mm. Oh, man. Yeah, I just saw that I mean, obviously I saw it before, but I just saw again the roofie spinning wheel kick knockout on Bobby Green. That was insane. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if BSD kind of runs into a big shot from Roofy. We'll see. San Francisco win only compared to anywhere else. It doesn't get above 70 all year and below 40. That's interesting. That's pretty cool. That's pretty good weather actually. San Fran gets a lot of rain in the winter. No, it doesn't. Yeah. It's not bad. It's not bad. Not bad at all, fellas. Not bad at all. Did you guys watch the Dirty Boxing card? Rosenstrike won the belt. Let's go. Places like Texas, Florida, Arizona, don't see 4 seasons. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as I said, that's kind of why I like New York. You kind of get all the seasons, specifically Long Island, I guess. But that's good. It's cool. It's cool. But yeah, boys, if you have any other questions about any fights or anything in general, be sure to let me know in chat. Outside of that, we've been streaming for like 2 hours, 20 minutes, something like that. It's been a great stream. I appreciate everybody for being here. Thanks for all the questions for sure. But yeah, I think I'm going to hop off stream at this point. I'll see you boys tomorrow. I'll be streaming normally 8 p.m. Eastern time. And obviously there'll be a video coming out tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So be on the lookout for that as well. And yeah, Tuesday we'll do our little watch along for Contender Series. So it should be fun. Should be a fun week. But anyways, peace out, fellas. Thanks for joining, everybody.